Good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission's meeting on May 6th at 6 p.m. We'll begin by calling the meeting to order. Brian, do you mind calling the roll?
Sure. Mr. Jones,
Here.
Ms. Tabashnik,
Here.
Ms. Langalis,
Here.
Ms. Lankowski, Mr. Hubers,
Here.
Ms. Wells, Mr. Schulman,
Here.
and Mr. Bryce.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Excellent. For tonight's meeting, both Diana and Anna are seated for the duration of the meeting. First, we will begin with a 2026-23 coastal site plan review, MGS Shorehaven LLC, 9 Shorehaven Road, District 3, Block 78, Lot 41, coastal site plan review for the construction of a detached accessory dwelling unit report and recommended action. Who this evening is representing 9 Shorehaven Road?
The owner, Greg Altschuler.
Hey, good evening. Please begin. Would you like to present on your proposal?
Sure. I actually don't have, can you share it on the screen, or I don't actually have it
Brian,
prepared?
do you mind?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll pull it up.
Thank you. I haven't been able to master that feature of sharing screen. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. So the proposal is to an ADU unit on the residential lot. We built a house here about 2 years ago, and we want to add an ADU according to the zoning requirements that were passed recently. I believe it complies with all the zoning setbacks and everything else, parking requirements, and I think that's pretty much it. I'm not sure exactly what else. I mean, obviously, I can answer any questions or get into more detail if there are any questions.
Are there any questions? I believe one thing that the staff had highlighted to you was about the distance that the patio was from the coastal site jurisdiction line.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. This will be, we'll measure it during construction and we'll adjust it accordingly. So.
Great. Okay. Are there any questions for this application or further discussion? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Tammy.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. Altschuler. Just wonder, the structure itself will be lifted and it'll be on the pilings. And what will be underneath the
Underneath the
structure?
piling?
The ground, yeah.
There will be just a ground cover. There will be some gravel, obviously, because grass doesn't really grow underneath the structure. So it will be gravel, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, you're not enclosing those pilings in any way?
No. As shown on the drawings, we're not enclosing it now.
Okay. And since you built your house a couple years ago, have you experienced any flooding under your home?
No, even last year when we had the highest flood elevation here, I think it was about 9 months ago. I don't remember. It didn't even come close to the property line.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, if there are no further questions, is there a motion for this application? All right, Galen, is that a move to approve?
Second.
Yes, and that's a second from Lou. Brian, do you mind bringing up the resolution?
Sure.
Great. And 1A addresses the 2 pieces of feedback that you had, Brian, right?
Right. Yep.
Are there any modifications to this resolution or any discussion of this resolution? All right, hearing none. Brian, do you mind calling the roll for this?
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Tabashnik,
Yes.
Ms. Langallis,
Yes.
Ms. Lankowski,
Yes.
Mr. Hubers,
Yes.
Ms. Wells.
Yeah.
Mr. Schulman,
Yes.
and Mr. Bryce.
Yes,
It's unanimous.
great. Thank you for your presentation this evening.
I appreciate it. Thank you for all your help.
Have a good night.
You too.
Our next application is 2025-95 Coastal Site Plan Review. Bobby Pascalides, 25 Shorefront Park, District 2, Block 85, Lot 59, Coastal Site Plan Review application for the construction of a new single-family detached dwelling. Report and recommended action. Who this evening is representing 25 Shorefront Park?
Good evening. My name is Andy Simulades with Lantec.
Good
I'm gonna try and beat that timing on that presentation.
evening.
Da. Right. So this is 25 Shorefront Park. To the east here is Long Island Sound. There's an existing single-family residence on the piece of property with a detached garage. The existing single-family residence is not FEMA compliant. The first floor is 2 feet above, but does have a basement, which is not permitted. What we're looking to do is demo that existing residence, leave that existing detached garage, and build a new single-family FEMA compliant residence. The only reason we're before you is because the state regs changed, I believe, in October of last year. Your regs previously, if you're at least 100 feet from coastal resources, this was done over the counter. We're about 170 plus feet from coastal resources. In terms of drainage improvements, currently there's none on the site. We're proposing a pervious patio and a gravel drive, which takes the roof leaders and infiltrates the water quality volume in both the rear and along the side here for the house and the driveway. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Are there any questions for Mr. Simulades? Please, Tammy. Oh, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Hi, Mr. Simulades. Could you please tell me what % lot coverage you are, and does that include the swimming pool?
So we are just looking back at the plan. Impervious existing is 3132 square feet, and we're proposing 3591 square feet. And I don't believe pools count towards impervious coverage under the new regs.
And the gravel driveway, is that true gravel, or is there hard, like macadam underneath the gravel? Is it a?
No, it's
decorative-
true gravel.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You got it.
Have you had an opportunity to review the comments from Department of Public Works on this application?
I didn't receive any back, but I don't anticipate any issues with, providing the drainage that will be required per the regulations.
Great. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Simulades or about this application? All right. Is there a motion for this application? Harvey, is that a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Galen. Brian, do you mind pulling up the resolution? I believe number 2 addresses the concern that I have, as DPW is one of the departments.
So Brian or Chapin, then are those sign-offs needed to be obtained just before granting the permit, but we can approve it subject to that, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of like belts and suspenders because that stuff happens regardless of if you put it as a condition of approval or not. In order for the applicant to get a building permit, they have to get sign-offs from DPW, fire marshal, all those kind of folks that the relevant departments.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, in the past, Tammy, there have been sometimes where DPW's had a comment that was sufficient enough where I kind of wanted to see a new site plan before we took action on it. But in this case, in looking at their comments, I'm happy to let them implement those comments with the applicant. Are there any other discussion or modifications to that resolution? Brian, do you mind calling the roll?
Sure. Ms. Wells,
Yes.
Mr. Hubers,
Yes.
Ms. Lankowski, thumbs up for yes,
I think that was.
thumbs down. There we go. Ms. Langalis,
Yes.
Ms. Stabashnik,
Yes.
Mr. Schulman,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
and Mr. Bryce.
Yes.
Is approved.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Our next item is a continuation from our last meeting and our first public hearing of the evening. It is 2026-13 special permit, St. George Greek Orthodox Church at 238 West Rocks Road, District 5, Block 23, Lot 10. Special permit application to modify special permit number 19-05 to remove the condition that the existing community building not be rented out for any events. Continuation of the public hearing, report, and recommended action. Before I turn it over to Attorney Burnham, who I believe is still representing this applicant, I wanted to just talk through how the public comment works for those who weren't able to attend our prior meeting. So what will happen first is our applicant will start by giving their presentation. In this case, introducing new materials since the prior application. Commissioners will have an opportunity to ask questions and hold a discussion. Following that, we will open up to the public to comment on the new information that was introduced into the record. And after that comment is complete, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. The commission will ask questions, and then we will move to deliberation. So just wanted to share from a structuring perspective of how this will work. And with that, I'll turn it to Attorney Bernheim for a presentation on this application.
Thank you, Mr. Bryce. I appreciate it. So we did convene with the church council to discuss some additional limitations on the events and the such. We submitted to your staff last Wednesday those proposed additional conditions to further protect the neighbors. Mr. Kleppen then sent, I believe, a revised staff report to me earlier this week, which I believe he issued on last Friday, with similar conditions, but somewhat different. And we're in agreement with the proposals by Mr. Kleppen. I don't know if you want me to go through those conditions, what we proposed, what he proposed, or not what he proposed, but he put into his staff report for your consideration, or if you already have them of record, maybe it's better I detail them so that the members of the public know what they would be commenting on. So what we had proposed was a limitation on private events rented out to non-parishioners as follows. So private non-parishioner, non-congregant events that either include live music or end after 9 p.m. shall be limited to 30 such events in any 12 calendar months, and further limited to only one such event in any week. So those private sort of events would be limited to 30 as a maximum in the year, only one per week. We also indicated that these private non-parishioner events that either include live music or end after 9 p.m. should not exceed 250 individuals. There was some talk last time about how our capacity could be up over 500. That's not our intention. So we would accept the 250 individual maximum, which would allow us to have a full sit-down dinner for a wedding type event. We also proposed that private non-parishioner events that exceed 150 individuals, include live music, and end after 8 p.m. should require on-site security provided by off-duty Norwalk police officers, so that they will have the proper equipment to ensure our compliance with the noise ordinance. And there were comments from neighbors last time that when the police are there, it gets better. When the police leave, it gets worse again. So if the police are there constantly for those types of events with 150 non-parishioner individuals, live music, and ending after 8 p.m., the police will be there until the event is over. And that's obviously further limited by the time requirements that I already discussed. We also provided a proposed condition that all private non-parishioner events that include either live music or exceed 100 individuals shall conclude no later than 10 p.m. if held between Sunday and Thursday, or 11 p.m. if held on Friday and Saturday. We did clarify that the host of the event would be able to clean the community center after the event. You know, obviously the majority of the people would be gone and the event would be over, but they would be allowed to clean up and put it back in proper order for the following day. We want to clarify that all activities, events, community center events, and the such will be required to comply with the applicable Norwalk noise ordinance at the time of the event. So whatever the noise ordinance is on the day of the event, that's what we have to comply with. If that changes 10 times between now and 5 years from now, we have to comply with the most current one at the time of the event. We're not trying to find a loophole here. And then also we heard loud and clear that there were some concerns about the dumpsters. So we want, where we find acceptable a condition that our civil engineer work with planning and zoning staff to determine an appropriate location or screening for the dumpster per the site plan. So we think that addresses all of the concerns that were raised, and we welcome your feedback. I don't know if you want me to go through Mr. Kleppin's staff report, or if Steve will do that, Brian, or I'd leave that to you, Mr. Bryce.
Thank you. I appreciate you speaking through the conditions that you've proposed. I think it's important for the public comment. I think before we go to commissioner questions, one thing I wanted to highlight is we did have a significant amount of public comment come in today that was written, and I really appreciate the time that people have taken to write in comments and such. So I just wanted to note that we have received, I believe it was 44 pages worth of comments that came in today, and thank you to everyone who took time to submit that for our review. With that, I'll turn it to commissioner questions for Attorney Bernheim or staff. Please go ahead, Galen.
Last time you were here, you talked about the fact that they used to have people join the church, so they became parishioners, and it wasn't an event held by a non-parishioner, and that was how you got around, or how the church got around the restriction. It was in the old, in the original approval. What I'd like to see is some kind of way, some kind of limit on who is considered a parishioner. So that can't happen now. So you say only 30 in a 12-month period of non-parishioners, but it turns out that 30 people were parishioners, and then only 30 per year. So could we put some kind of limit, like they have to have been a member for a full year before their event? Some kind of check on that?
Sure. Well, I know that was, staff did not agree with the process that had taken place, and we're not trying to fight them on that process any longer. I don't know if doing a time period of when they were actually a parishioner necessarily works. If somebody just moved here and is getting married and they truly are a congregant and getting married in the church, then that should be a church function, I would think.
Well, in order to join the church, do you have to be, baptized or confirmed as a Greek Orthodox person? I don't know how it works.
To be a true congregant of the church, yes, you have to be a practicing Greek Orthodox baptized individual. So
could we say that only baptized Greek Orthodox individuals can be considered members of the church for the purposes of this?
Yeah, I think something like that could work for the purposes of, does it count towards one of the quote unquote private events? If they are the host is a baptized practicing Greek Orthodox member of the church, then I think that works.
Galen, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if we approve this, and again, I made my position clear at the last meeting, this is not simply going to apply to the Greek Orthodox Church. It's going to apply to the entire city, to most, if not all, of the religious institutions within the city. So to tailor this by saying someone has to be Greek Orthodox, to me, doesn't make sense. Because a Catholic church might want to do this, or a synagogue might want to do this, Well, in
a synagogue, you could say has to be somebody who's, I forgot what they.
If I can jump in,
That way to show you are really a member of the church or synagogue in good standing, so that there is an open door for them to do what had been done in the past, where they had people just sign up on the spot, say, "Oh, I'm a member of the church," and then they could do their event.
Yeah.
So if you have a better suggestion, Lou, some way to measure that.
I worry about the enforceability of such a procedure and, putting that burden on zoning staff. And I also worry about the zoning and the city needing to make a determination of like who is a member of a church or a religion. Like I worry about that piece. I understand, and I also don't want them to be circumventing, or anyone to be circumventing the spirit of a regulation, right, through changing their membership rules or internal membership rules.
Well, like if a neighbor complains to us and says, there were 60 events. Show me that only 30 of them were non-members.
If I may, the way that Steve phrased it in the draft resolution of approval in his most recent staff report, I think makes sense. Let me read one of those for you. It says the community building may be used for events for religious and youth celebrations for non-congregants, provided that, and then there's limitations. So I think the term non-congregants makes sense, because if it's a bar or bat mitzvah, they're clearly non-congregants. If it's a christening of somebody from a Catholic church, it's clear they're clearly non-congregants. If it's a quinceañera, which would be a youth event, clearly non-congregants. So I think that may be a good way to, classify it in a way that it seems like staff is comfortable to enforce, because it was the language that was in his report that he sent me.
I see both Tammy and Anna have their hands up. While we're on this topic, I want to see if anyone else has comments or questions related to this particular topic before we move to the next.
Yes, I do.
Oh,
Anna,
please, go ahead.
or Anna, you can go first. Okay, Mr. Bernheim, could you please clarify when you say the limits on private events would be 30 per year? That would be non-congregant events. But I think what Galen was trying to work in there is what about congregation events? And I understand Lou's point completely, and I think he makes a good one, and I wouldn't want to limit a congregation's ability to have its own events because they maximized out the public or private events, but non-congregants. So can you clarify, is it just 30 events for everybody, or is that really 30
Nope.
what I would call public events?
It would be 30 what you call public events. The church, if they are church-sponsored events, church congregant events, they are, it's unlimited. Today it's unlimited. There's no restriction on that. And we're not proposing any restriction on truly church-related events.
Okay.
But
And
I went a neighbor and I said, there have been a whole bunch of events. Show me their congregants. How would they do that?
Well, we keep records of what events are happening at the facility. If there's a complaint, we would have to respond with a description of who had the event. Was it a non-congregant event? Was it a church function? Was it a congregant's wedding or christening or so on and so forth?
Well, it was a birthday party, and I don't know. I don't mean to belabor, and I think everybody gets what my problem with this is.
I mean, I think what we're trying to accomplish here is to show that there will be a limitation on the number of potential events that could adversely impact the neighbors in their opinion. But we're also trying to ensure that we're adding safeguards so that any event that happens there will not adversely impact them, and that we will be compliant with the noise ordinance, and that they will end at a reasonable hour. And really my goal with these conditions and hopefully with the church operating in accordance with them is that there's not complaints in the future. And that quite frankly, if there happens to be 35 non-congregant events that you guys don't even hear about it because the other conditions are so meaningful and powerful that that doesn't result in any complaints. And that's really the goal of this, is to ensure that there's no future complaints, right? If there are complaints, you want to have conditions that you can impose against us to protect those neighbors. But my goal is to come up with a resolution with appropriate conditions so that there's no complaints in the future.
Are there other comments or questions related to this? Go ahead, Anna. Yeah.
Yeah, might be more of a comment, but I don't think I'd be comfortable with a resolution that tried to identify who is and is not a member of a house of worship. And in fact, I want to be clear that I haven't made up my mind, but where I'm leaning right now, when I saw this list of conditions, this seemed like extremely complicated. I think this, and I think, Lou, I know you said that if we approve this, it would apply to other places. I don't see how that's accurate. This is a special permit modification, and I feel like they had a special permit that said you can't do this thing. They did this thing. There was a notice of violation. There haven't been any fines assessed. They haven't, to my knowledge, ceased the violation, provided evidence according to the notice of violation that they've ceased the violation. I think if they had paid the fine and then followed the rules of their original permit for a period of time and demonstrated like no complaints from neighbors or something, I might be open to the idea of like, should we allow event rentals in this zone for religious facilities, right? And everybody having the same thing applied to them. Right now, there's no event rentals allowed in this zone. There's no live music allowed in this zone. The fact that there may be one or two other religious facilities that may be renting space is sort of a separate issue, because the special permit in front of us is for this facility, and there have been complaints and violations issued, or a violation issued to this facility. So I would be very much open to considering whether this is something that should be allowed in Norwalk. I see a lot of benefits to it. What should the conditions be when this type of thing is allowed in Norwalk? But I think that's sort of a different question than the special permit in front of us. And I'm concerned about attaching so many complicated conditions to a single special permit. You know, and I especially wouldn't want to veer into the religious end of it. We need to make sure that the zoning requirements on our religious institutions aren't any more restrictive than our secular institutions. And I feel like this starts to veer in the wrong direction. So that's my thinking right now. I wanted to throw all of that out.
Thank you. Can I address some of that?
Please.
I'm indifferent as to whether or not you want to identify how you determine who's a congregant or non-congregant. I think from my perspective, what I'm saying is if it's not a really truly related church function, we're trying to limit those to 30. We have ceased the violation as alleged. Okay. I did speak truthfully last week when I said there were a couple of other private events that had been scheduled with families who made plans, had family coming into town. You know, the Chamber of Commerce event was planned and there was no way to move that. Like, there were certain events that after we received the notice of violation, we made the decision that we could not cancel on those people based upon contractual obligations, and that we would own that and deal with whatever citation we got, whatever violation we got, we would deal with that as the church. But since the notice of violation was issued, there were no new private events booked. Nothing else has happened since those events took place.
Excuse me, can you just clarify something? When was the last private event that took place? I understand that it was pre-scheduled and I understand why you still held it, but like, how long? It's May now. How long has it been that there have been no private events on this property?
I'll ask some of my folks who are watching to get me that information, and
for the interruption.
So I'll get back to you on that one. So I think the other point of clarification is that this was approved as a community center. It's not an event space. And a community center is very similar to an event space per your regulations. Community centers also are not allowed in this zone. So this is a pre-existing non-conforming use, just like the live music. The live music was not regulated per my last presentation until 2011. This was approved in 2006, and there was live music that had taken place all over Norwalk prior to 2011. So it is a pre-existing non-conforming use for the live music. That being said, I completely agree with you that I think the commission has to consider both secular and non-secular event spaces. I referenced both Shore Haven and Shore and Country at the last public hearing. Those are both in zones that don't allow event spaces either. And the Temple Shalom and St. Matthew's Church that have approvals similar to ours, but don't have the restriction that it only be church or synagogue members on it. So all we're asking for is to be treated similarly to both other religious institutions as well as the private country clubs that have event spaces, rent those out to anybody and everybody, and don't have these same restrictions but they are in a zone that doesn't allow for event space as well. So we just want to be treated similarly to these others. And we understand that over the past, I'll call it year or more, that the neighbors have been upset with the types of events that we've had. And we're aware of that, and we're proposing these conditions so that we could protect those neighbors and not have those same complaints, those same issues arise in the future. So that's our goal here tonight, is to allow for St. George to be treated similarly to other, both secular and non-secular community centers / event spaces that are in zones that don't allow them anymore, just like us. But to be treated similarly to them, understanding that we have to be good neighbors and we have an obligation to not materially and adversely impact them, which is why we're proposing these sorts of conditions.
As a quick note on something you mentioned there, for example, some of those clubs are waterfront clubs, which I believe are allowed uses in the CD1 zones. I don't have the use table up in front of me at the moment. Maybe we can ask staff to pull that together. But my understanding is that they are a
Special permit with limitations, waterfront clubs.
Thank you. Yep.
Uh,
Are there other?
Yeah.
Please.
Attorney Burnham, in the draft resolution, condition 2, like the community building may be used for church-related activities by members of the congregation. This is exactly my understanding is this is how we ended up here in the first place, which was that there was a very broad kind of definition of members of the congregation. And so where in the what concretely is going to prevent a recurrence of the past issue where you and staff disagreed on what a member of the congregation is? Don't we need some sort of condition or agreement if we're going to have basically open booking for members of the congregation?
Quite exactly.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not necessarily opposed to that if they need to be a true quote unquote member of the church. I mean, I don't think the word congregation was used. It was a member of the church, and a lot of the private waterfront clubs that we just referenced says that if you want to have an event, it needs to be sponsored by a member. So I think that it's a similar type of concept that the church took. Now, the staff disagreed with our interpretation, so that's why we're here. We're trying to fix it. We're not trying to, create another issue to be addressed in 6 to 12 months. I think if you were to say, the next proposed condition after the one that you just read says the community building may be used for events for religious and youth celebrations for non-congregants. I mean, I think that does add clarity to it, right? So if you're not a registered member baptized in, maybe not this, baptized in a Greek Orthodox church, and now this is your primary church, I mean, you should be able to show something that that's the case. So I think the term congregants is important here. I think the Catholic Church, if you're going to get married in the Catholic Church, you have to show that somebody was baptized in the Catholic Church, and so on and so forth. So I think there is paperwork that could be, if it comes to it, shown as to compliance with the regulation. Again, my goal is really the more important conditions are the limitations on the number, the timing, confirmation that the noise ordinance is complied with, the off-duty police officers are there to ensure that. Those, in my view, are the more important conditions, because those are the ones that are going to ensure that the neighbors are not adversely impacted.
Understood, but most or all of those conditions currently explicitly only attach to the non-congregant celebrations.
Right, because currently there's no limitations on the congregant celebrations, congregant activities. There's no limitations.
Understood, but like that's in a roundabout way why we're here, because we do like that's true, but also we have differences of opinion about what a congregant is.
Well, I think that's truly why we're here is who's a congregant versus a member versus a congregant. It's not um, if the church were to say, you know what, fine, we'll just have member events, we wouldn't need to be here. But we're here because they want the ability to have some non-congregant events as well.
And maybe this is for discussion later. Like I understand people's like discomfort about like trying to write a definition of a congregant into the restrictions. Like one thing we might want to consider is figuring out like a set of events, like a wedding conducted at the church, or like a concrete set of events, so we get out of the business of like trying to finally define what a congregant is, and figure out if there's a set of events that like clearly are church related that would be allowed.
My concern with that is unless you're fully aware of all the events that the church does actually host. I mean, are you aware that they have like a weekly Greek cultural dance class for their congregants? Like, if you were to do something like that and you left that out, that would be devastating to them, because that's exactly what the community center is there for, right? But now they wouldn't be allowed to do it, or it would count towards the 30. So I think we have to be careful there in that regard as to identifying only these types of events fall under the unlimited events. Unless it's truly, hosted by the church for congregation members or prospective congregation members, again, they welcome all. They're not going to say, just because you're Roman Catholic, you can't come to our church and maybe become Greek Orthodox, so we have to be careful about those sorts of limitations as well. So the last event, I'll say non-congregant event, was on March 29th. It was a baptism, not a Greek baptism.
Thank you. So it's been a little over a month to see what the situation
Right.
is and the
I think there
church's
were-
ability to not disturb the neighbors. And I feel like, I don't know, pay the fine, solve the issue, show that you're a good neighbor, and lobby for a change to the zoning regulations, period, to allow this type of accessory use for religious facilities in 1L zones. Just an idea.
I think our position is that it is allowed because of the type of approval that we got. The only reason why it's not allowed is because this condition was imposed. If this condition wasn't imposed, we wouldn't be here tonight either, because it would have already been allowed.
I mean, if I went to medical school, my mother would be very happy, right? It was imposed.
I think the live music determination is important too. I think it's still staff's opinion that live music is not and was not ever permitted here. It was never permitted in residential zones with any use. It wasn't written into the zoning code until 2011, and when it was only applicable to business zones. So just because it was happening doesn't mean it's legally non-conforming.
And I just want to point out that congregants can have birthday parties, can have anniversary parties, can have Christmas parties, all kinds of events that have really nothing to do with the church at all. And that gets added on to the 30 that can take place for non-congregants. So it could be that in any given month, you have 8 to 10 events, right?
I guess anything is possible. Yes, I think it's unlikely. But I guess anything is possible.
Galen, I think
There
to
could
that
be
point,
8 events, this month for all congregants. If the congregants wanted to start hosting events there on a regular basis, there's no limitation currently.
Galen, I think to that point, I lean towards conditions that would limit the impact on neighbors as much as possible, just because of the number of events that could happen for congregants or non-congregants. It's hard to measure because of that lack of restriction on the congregant events. So like taking the measure of be it time of day or sufficient screening or having a off-duty officer there to monitor or not allowing live music, like those are controls I see as helping with neighborhood quality of life and enjoying their property. Go ahead.
Well, I just had an idea. We could put a limit, that there are 30 in a year hosted by non-congregants. But we could also say no more than 3 events per month in the evening that with music, whether it's for congregants or non-congregants. So that the total number of events in the evening where there's a possibility of music are limited. Right?
Yep.
That would be possible.
Diana, did I see your hand up before?
Yes,
It's a
I'm
little
sorry.
blurred. It's okay.
Chapin,
Go
my
ahead.
mouse seems to have died, so I
Oh,
can't.
no.
So, okay. So I just want to be clear. Brian, were you saying that live music is not allowed in the zone? We know has never been allowed in the zone and there's no grandfathering. So theoretically, even the church events are not allowed to have live music?
So, yeah, correct. So live music has never been permitted in residential zones. I would assume as part of like a church or any sort of religious event, it is
Right.
sort of accessory to that. But this is a little bit different where these are, separate events occurring that are also doing live music.
Okay, thank you.
And there's a separate process that an organization like this church would go through if they were hosting a community festival or block party style event, right? And that's where they could get a special, I'm going to use the term special permit, but a permit to have the live music at such events. Is that right?
Correct.
I would not want to see us get too hung up on live music. I've gone to an awful lot of events where they've had DJs, and the music is even louder than it is with live music.
Louis, our definition for live music would include DJ as well. So it could be a band or it could be
okay.
a DJ.
Okay.
So,
Thank
yeah,
you, Steve.
it doesn't distinguish.
And with due respect to staff, I do disagree on whether or not it's grandfathered in. Whether it was not regulated prior to 2011, as Brian just said. So if it happened there prior to 2011 on a regular basis, and your live music is defined as any amplified music, not just DJ, not just live music, it's any amplified music. And you heard members of the congregation testify last or speak at the public hearing last time, where they have been to many events with live music at those events prior to the 2011 time. So I do think that it is grandfathered in. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of fighting this out. I think the important thing, as I've said all night tonight, is coming up with the right conditions to protect the neighbors. And I really think a key to that is the proposal to have the off-duty police officers there for any of these events that are occurring as we propose later in the evening and that have live music, and that will ensure compliance with your noise ordinance, which is really what the key should be. If there's music at a facility, if it complies with their noise ordinance, is there really an issue? The issue is when you don't comply with the noise ordinance.
John?
Yeah, going to the point you were just talking about with having the Norfolk police officers present, it seems like the 150 individual cutoff is kind of random.
Oh, John,
We
you just
lost you
muted
for
yourself.
Yep. Your audio muted, John. We lost you at 150.
Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
I'm not sure that that limitation of 150 is meaningful. How much difference in the noise would there be if there's 100 participants with live music rather than 151 participants with live music?
Yeah, I mean, you could tie it to if there's live music, presumably. I mean, if that's the key point, you're right. If there's 50 people there and there's, a DJ that's blasting everything, then I would think that that's a reasonable comment. I would agree with that.
I think that's something that was raised in one of the letters that we received today as well. Was for any live music, they had requested a condition where a off-duty officer is present for that stated reason. Going back to the live noise component and the question about grandfather, my understanding is that uses that weren't expressly allowed or rather that were not regulated were not permitted previously. Am I understanding that correct, Brian and Steve?
Right. So our zoning regs, they say what you can do. They don't say what you can't do. So you can't build a two-family house in a zone that only allows for single-family houses just because the reg doesn't say you can't build a two-family house. It just says you can build a single-family house.
Okay.
Right. But the counter to that is that some live music was illegal from 1752 until 2011 in all of Norwalk. So there was never any live music was illegal because it wasn't allowed by the zoning. I guess zoning came about in the 1930s. So from the 1930s to 2011, anybody who had live music could have gotten a zoning violation. That doesn't, I don't think that's really how it was worked. I don't think how it was enforced. What happened was when I read the minutes on the live music was that it was being enforced in an unfair way. Some people got it, other people didn't get it. And there was no regulation to show you when you were entitled to get it. So they passed a regulation to clarify that. That's exactly what happens when you get grandfathered in. If you were doing it prior to that regulation happening, then it was a legal non-conforming use. I don't think you can take the position that all live music from the 1930s to 2011 was illegal in the city of Norwalk.
Steve?
Yeah, and I agree with Attorney Bernheim not to go down the rabbit hole, but I couldn't resist going down the rabbit hole. I think the distinction would be if there are things going on in this particular space on the church property that was, had live music, say they had, the dance classes or something similar to that. I don't think that would fall outside the parameters of the initial approval. I think any event that they had in that space that had live music that was for a wedding or some kind of other party or chamber event or gala or anything else, I would say then that would have been an illegal use at that point in time. So I would draw a distinction between, obviously if they've got a band there that's practicing music for the festival or it's a DJ or some kind of amplified noise, but it's in relation to a specific church activity, I would say no, that wouldn't have been illegal. I would say it's when they're doing outside events and brought in amplified music, then that would be illegal.
My apologies for bringing us down the rabbit hole. I wanted some clarification on that, so thank you. Are there other questions or comments for Attorney Bernheim or staff?
If this is the appropriate time to bring it up, I did see kind of an informal census of the places of worship, like that was in the agenda packet, and I don't think it was prior. Who compiled that, and maybe could you kind of speak to the conclusions you drew from it?
So that was put together by staff per Mr. Bashnik's request. I don't know if I fully met what she was asking for, but essentially just a list of places of worship in Norwalk and whether or not they rent out a portion of their place of worship. I limited it on that part to just the CD1L zone, since that's similar to St. George's. So kind of just showing that per my research, there's only a few of them that do rent out their halls, at least per their websites. We didn't really get into the commercial zones because when you're in a commercial zone, I think it's a little bit more similar to what you could do there anyways. So that's why it was held to the CD1L.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. And it looks like you shared the CD1S, M, and L zone.
All right, so maybe I did
information
went a little bit further for that. Just
You went
that
a little bit further. And in the 1L, there were 3 doing rentals and 4 not, for whatever that's worth. I just thought it would be helpful to have some data.
Are there other comments, questions for the applicant or staff at this time? One thing I'd like to share before we move to the next phase is I agree with what I'm hearing from both Lou and Anna about how this is something I'd prefer to contemplate as a text change or an overlay or something in that regard, as I see that the use of an event space and that live music capability is something that we as a commission should consider in the context of the overall zone and whether it makes sense for it to exist in residential areas in Norwalk. So that's just some commentary I wanted to share before we go to the public comment. Attorney Bernheim, do you have anything else that you'd like to present on before we go to public comment?
No, thank you, Mr. Price.
Any other comments or questions before we move to public comment? All right. So I'll go through the steps for public comment in just a moment and how folks can participate. One thing I do want to highlight ahead of time is that we received numerous letters, as I shared at the outset, and there's a material for us to review. I at least need more time to review the letters that came in today. In reviewing the letters and correspondence that came in, there was the letters of support and letters of opposition. There were letters that suggested constraints or conditions to apply to this resolution. But what I wanted to speak to is there was also commentary related to disputes that were happening that are unrelated to the decision making that we'll be making as part of this body. So one thing I'd request is that as folks are making comments tonight, to keep it to the application that's in front of us and the decision that we need to make as to whether or not this is a permitted use or permitted modification to this special permit. So with that, I would like to move to the public comment and highlight some of the how everyone will participate and the process for this participation. So we will invite you to speak in just a moment. Brian will give you instructions on how you can raise your hand to participate. You will only have one opportunity to speak. We ask that if you spoke at our last hearing, that you only speak against new material that came up in tonight's discussion or materials that were presented this evening. We do not limit how long you speak, but we ask that you are concise and that you are polite. This portion is not a dialogue. The applicant will have an opportunity to respond to all of the comments that are raised at the end of everyone's chance to speak. After that, we'll have an opportunity to ask the applicant further questions. We ask that you are polite in your comments and that you start with your full name and address. With that, Brian, do you mind sharing how folks can participate in tonight's public hearing?
Sure. So for members of the public, if you'd like to speak, you can use the raise your hand tool. It's at the bottom of your screen. You click it once. If you're dialed in on a phone, you hit *9. With that, we have Maria DeVito.
Good evening.
Good evening. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you please state your name and address?
Yes, my name is Maria DeVito, and my address is 99 East Avenue. Thank you for the attention you are giving this matter. My name is Maria Handrinos DeVito. As I said, I want to begin by saying clearly I care deeply about St. George and its people. I was baptized in this church, attended Greek school, taught Sunday school, earned awards through youth groups, and was married in this church. I am a product of this parish, and my family has supported St. George as parishioners and large donors. Despite this, I am here to urge you to deny the proposed modification in its entirety. While my letter and exhibits capture all of the evidence in great detail, which I urge you to study carefully after this meeting and ask any questions you may have, the high points of my personal opinion remain that the current management and leadership of the church have departed from their originally represented Greek Orthodox religious purpose, and in so doing have undermined the trust of donors, neighbors, the public, and this commission. This material change in use, along with inconsistent representations and lack of full disclosure, makes St. George Management a deceptive actor who has demonstrated bad faith in the ability to be relied on to adhere to any guidelines or other forms of agreement. With alcohol and food safety, families, and children in the neighborhood involved, this lack of reliability creates a public safety risk that Norwalk does not need. My family was among the principal sponsors of the church's 2016 fundraiser gala, contributing substantial financial support through our business, the Norwalk Inn and Conference Center. We did so based on clear and repeated representations that this project would become the singular Father Germanos Stavropoulos Community Center, a space dedicated exclusively to parish life, fellowship, and our shared Greek culture, as well as sports activities. Never once would we have financed a direct commercial competitor operating tax-free under a trade name as a full-on catering destination, advertising itself to this day, and I'll show you, on the exact same commercial marketing platforms where we market our own for-profit $231,000 tax-paying corporation, while generating what may be thousands of dollars in sales over these past 2 years, if not over $1 million, departing from its own original Greek Orthodox religious mission, all the while burdening its neighbors and misrepresenting the intensity of its use. I'll have a video to show you in a couple moments, with the full knowledge of the church and its officials as told by them to me personally. That is not a subtle shift. It's not a mistake. It's not an evolution. It is a material change in use and intensity, spanning over 2 years by design, raising serious concerns about fairness, impact, and compliance, and it goes directly to the credibility of the application before you. If this is not enough, the pattern of incomplete and inconsistent disclosure between the church and its catering operator has been described to the commission in ways that conflict with publicly available statements and direct communications. The church's own published media, which I shared with the Chamber of Commerce back in November, the president as well as a board member, has referred to this caterer as exclusive, while testimony has suggested otherwise. These are not minor inconsistencies. They are material discrepancies that cut to the core of how the management of this facility operates, which is with deception. In addition, the application does not fully reflect a network of overlapping personal, business, and financial relationships between food and beverage supply channels. These are precisely the kinds of relationships and ties connected to this operation that should be clearly disclosed in any application, including prior efforts to establish exclusive arrangements so that the commission can evaluate the true nature of the use. Land use decisions depend on complete transparency and good faith representations. When the full picture is not presented, the integrity of that process is compromised. This is not about community gathering opposition. It is about ensuring that what was approved is what is actually being operated, and it is not here. Norwalk already has an extensive list of highly affordable venues. There is no gap in the market that meet community needs while complying fully with zoning and regulatory expectations, including managing relationships positively with their neighbors. These venues are far from booked to capacity. In fact, even those that are fully staffed and are functioning at peak operational levels work extremely hard to mitigate risks concerning safety around food and alcohol in servicing their events. This is not the work of volunteers and surveillance cameras and apps on phones or private security, but of dedicated hospitality teams of servers, bartenders who are trained, dishwashers, cooks, floor managers, maintenance, and cleaning crew who labor in the trenches, something St. George does not have. My family supported this project 10 years ago in good faith. My father, Chris Handrinos of blessed memory, who helped make this building possible in 2016, believed he was contributing to a place of community and faith, not a commercial enterprise operating under the shell of a nonprofit and in direct competition with our family's legacy business, the Norwalk Inn and Conference Center. Were he here today, he would expect that this commission be given the full and accurate truth. Right now, it is not. Because of this material departure from religious use, inconsistent representations, and lack of full disclosures, in the interest of public safety and fair trade, I respectfully urge you to deny this application in its entirety without exception. I would like to provide an overview of some of my exhibits with you. If I could share my screen, please.
Can you describe your, oh, go ahead.
Sure. Maria, I just have to promote you to panelist to do so. So you're going to get a message on your screen.
Sure.
While you're doing that, can you describe the nature of your exhibits?
I think she had to leave and then come back. There we go.
Hi. All right. So I'm going to start with Exhibit C because I know that you have my exhibits. And C is the picture of my family at the gala for this Father Germanos Stavropoulos Community Center. This is the dedication page to my dad. These are my parents. These are me, with the full understanding that this would become a community center. These are all of the donors, including contributors to Silent Auction, who contributed to that event. It's actually, I counted up to 36 entities, business entities, people who bought into this whole idea.
Ms. DeVito, if you are intending to share your screen, we are not seeing it quite yet.
Oh, okay.
At the bottom, Maria, there'll be a button to share your screen. You'll click that, and then it'll give you a pop-up of the image you want to share.
Perfect. Can you see it now?
It is loading. There we go. We can see it now. Yes.
Okay. I'm starting with Exhibit C, as I said, because I know that you have all of my exhibits. This is the program guide from the 2016 gala, where it was held at the Norwalk Inn, the dedication page to my father as the benefactor for this space, my parents both in attendance, myself in attendance at this event. There were nearly 36 entities, private individuals who contributed substantial funds for this community center. Just wanted to provide evidence of that event, which was a kickoff. Then I take you to the Cvent platform. Cvent is a commercial marketing platform for event venues. To this day, and I'll click on, this is from May 1st, the day that I submitted my exhibits. I go to Cvent today. Here we go, Stonehill. This is the trade name. Up and running, capacity 600, ready and open for business. They can't even stick to what's going on and presented here on this day. So with that said, we go back to the exhibits. I want to get back to my other tab. Just a minute. Hold on. I need to move this menu to, here we go. Okay. So back to my PDF. Again, Cvent is a commercial, competitive event venue platform for marketing. And Stonehill is alive and running, up for business today. There are ancillary vendors. This Stonehill, which is the trade name given to the venue, and I'll get to more on that later, is recognized as a bat mitzvah destination location. All of this photography is from the inside of that venue. Again, this photographer who works with the exclusive caterer leads with Stonehill bat and bar mitzvah. That's a Jewish tradition, religious rite of passage. It's not Greek Orthodox. Stonehill is not a registered trade name according to the City of Norwalk database. How do we get to the name Stonehill? Well, that's as shocking to me as it may be to you. In the fall of 2023, church media says that the space received its blessing from Archbishop Elpidoforos. That was November 19, 2023. By winter, very early winter of winter 2024, the name Stonehill emerged. Stonehill did not emerge before the blessing of the Archbishop. What was the kickoff event? I'm actually going to skip now to Exhibit J. This was a marketing event promoting the Sweet 16 party. If you look at the floor of this dance floor, it says the letters ZOE. That was promoted across other platforms as a kickoff event for the daughter of the exclusive caterer, as a Sweet 16 party, titling it as an epic Sweet 16. This is endorsed by the son of the priest, saying the hall at St. George Greek Orthodox Church looks so beautiful. There is a call to action here. If you look at call or email us to set up a tour. This extravagant Sweet 16 was the perfect setting for this epic party. Okay, so they are soliciting business. Dimitri Desouras is the son of Father Nick Desouras. He is a church ministry leader. And by the way, just to update we're parishioners, not congregants. It's not a congregation, it's a parish. But that's fine. That maybe everyone's forgotten that too. They probably forgot to update you because I know they've departed from their religious mission. We go back to the webpage from November 2025. This is the page where the caterer is identified as the exclusive caterer. This was again shared with the president of the Chamber of Commerce and board member Rick Tavella when I filed my complaint with them. Now we get to Facebook pages. This is again speaking to the heart of it's been commercialized by design. Effie Stefanidis, who spoke in the last session on April 22nd, talks about, opening this up to karate schools and other nice groups. Well, I mean, that's just kind of like admitting guilt, in my opinion, because she's saying here, even back in 2025, I am looking forward to working with anyone who is looking to reserve a party reception venue. So I don't know how more flagrant this can be. I find it as an affront to the commission. Now we get to Exhibit L. This is evidence of my meeting with Father Nick. This was a year ago when I approached him about handling the catering or supporting the catering for the church functions for the church. I met with Father Nick and the parish council president, John Aslanidis, at Father Nick's office. This was when I was told directly that the exclusive caterer, or the person who has the right of first refusal, is the exclusive caterer, Nikki Glekas. Norwalk Inn has never serviced catering facility except as sponsors once, very recently, some months back. We've never been called on as caterers, and that's fine. And in fact, that's, looking back now, that's for the best. And this is finally evidence of their Chamber of Commerce page, and the holiday party, the holiday reception. I want to share with you now the video that speaks to the intensity of the use. It's a compilation. It's 2.5 minutes, demonstrating activity that was available on social media, publicly available, featuring the voice of the neighbors, which I thought would be a very important backdrop for you to see. So let me pull that up.
This is residential. The last approval that we have for the community center. It's just allowed in the zone, for the zone. This is residential. The last approval that we have for the community center with the special permit that had to do it. So this condition that should only be for church purposes. Related to the church, and it's a commercial operation. Is there a liquor permit? Is there liquor going on there? That would be our knowledge, no. And I live directly across the street from the church. Every weekend, there was a party that was definitely not related to the church. The last straw for me was in November at 1:30 in the morning. Couldn't take it anymore. The parties go on till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. The people dump out, hang out in the parking lot, roofing it up for another half an hour. The trucks come at 3 o'clock with the backup, just picking up whatever, musicians, stuff and furniture. And there are about 10 neighbors that have been coming to my house to ask me to do something. If you look across the street and you see who is coming to the party, they're not dressed like they're going to church. It appears that this is just a catering bar. Yeah, I mean, the parking lot fills up all day long. The trucks are unloading speakers and stuff. Sometimes it's a disc jockey, sometimes it's live music. My dog goes nuts. We have had stuff fall off the windows. One time it was so loud that a bunch of car alarms went off in the parking lot, and the fire department came that night. A couple of times that the police came, everything calmed down. It was nice for about 20 minutes, and then it picks up again.
And I hope 2026 is full of new exciting opportunities.
So again, this is all real estate tax-free activity. Okay. Exhibits M through W provide evidence of the close family and business ties between a lead church official and the caterer, as well as major food distributor, and other information as evidence through private events and state filings that raise concerns about preferential treatment and lack of disclosure to the commission, rendering the application untruthful. Because of the high volume of detail provided in my letter and exhibits, I ask that you study the document carefully between now and the next meeting so that you can fully understand the concerns, unless of course you've had enough information and you feel like you can confidently cite against this, which I think I have provided a lot of information. But I ask that you study the document carefully so you can fully understand the concerns raised and make an informed decision after careful study. I'm available to answer any questions you may have, and I invite discussion not only with the commission, but with any member of the community, because this is a community issue. Anyone who is actually seeking clarification and understanding about the deeper issues involved. I am disinterested in the public attacks, by the way, that I received yesterday, and the public attacks on my business from people who have spoken to this commission. That was not appreciated by my family. Anyone interested in educating themselves as to the full facts of the matter, please, I invite your information. The truth is, St. George leadership has done a great deal of harm, in my opinion, to its community, its donors, and the commission. And I believe they have a great deal of reflecting to do. In closing, I want to thank you again for your role in this process, and I appreciate your time. Your service is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Second here. Next we have Stacy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Please state
great.
your name and address.
My name is Stacy Christopheridis. I live 70 Beacon Street, Norwalk, Connecticut. And I am asking the Planning and Zoning Commission to please approve St. George's variance. I had submitted a letter this morning because I was unable to attend the last hearing because my mom was in the hospital, who's since deceased. And the reason I bring that up is because while people are claiming that the community center is used for just parties and the amount of events that occur, well, I want to bring to your attention that in the Greek faith, we do have, when someone passes, we have a 9-day memorial, which is not done outside of, it's just at the cemetery. Then we have a 40-day memorial, and at which time we do take whoever attends church. Oh, by the way, I am a Greek Orthodox Christian. I should say that. And I am a steward of the St. George. I'm sorry, I'm winging this, so it may not be all. So when it's the 40 days, we have church, they do the memorial, and then all the parishioners are invited to go to the community center. So now that may be looked at as an event. No, it's part of our religion. That is what we do. So me and my family on June 7th will be my mom's 40th day memorial, at which time we go to church. Father reads Mnemosimo for my mom, and then we go to the church. So it may look like there's event after event after event. Well, some of these are very religious events, and that being one of them. We also have a 6-month where they serve coffee, and we also have a year after the person who passed away. So think about the amount of people in the community, in the parish. And if we do, unfortunately people pass, and we have that. So it may look like we have so many events, but yet these are religious events. And while people may say that, look, I was raised in that church. I am close to retirement now, so it tells you how long I've been a member. And unfortunately, as I addressed in my letter, times are tough. Times are tough. The church, we built that community center, and that costs money to maintain. If the strain is on the parishioners, we can only give so much. I try to give with all my heart, but sometimes it may be shortfall. So we look at having an event here, and I'm hoping that the commission will allow that to continue. I don't have any I'm not against having any restrictions as far as noise, or police officers that were mentioned. I have no problem because the neighbors, it is important to the neighbors. I mean, I don't think I would like it in my neighborhood if it was constant issues, but there's ways to take care of that. There are ways to take care of that by putting, I don't know if you want to call it restrictions or things that they have to comply with. But I think it's really kind of unfair to take that away from the church. I mean, part of it is so the church can still be there. It's very expensive. I can tell you it's very expensive to run the church. And that is my heritage. That is my faith. And I want to see St. George there. I don't want it to be where we built that beautiful community center to remain empty. And it does do a lot for the children. We have Sunday school there. We have Greek school there to keep our tradition and our faith. So all that is very important. And again, I totally winged this. I wasn't prepared to have a statement, but I just respectfully ask that you please approve it. St. George is my heart and soul. It was my mother's heart and soul, and it's my family's heart and soul. And we truly love the church. And I think it's important to keep whatever religion one may be. It just so happens to be that I'm Greek Orthodox, to keep the faith strong. We need religion in this world, whatever religion it is, but we need it. And I thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for your loss.
Next, we have Jimmy Selfides.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening. Can you state your name and address?
Yeah, my name is Jimmy Selfides. My address is 85 Chestnut Hill Road, Norwalk, Connecticut. I was born and raised in Norwalk, Connecticut. I've lived here for 55 years. I have a couple of points to make. I've been here for 55 years. I've attended numerous events at numerous both religious and so-called private institutions, whether it be the Eagles Club, the private golf courses, St. Matthew's Church, St. George Church, and a few others. I don't need to go through all of the names, but there has never been, to my knowledge, any restriction on any of these institutions holding events that were for non-members. And I think to hold St. George to that, I don't know what the right word is here, but to hold them to a different standard would be very, very wrong. And contrary to what Ms. DeVito said, I can tell you that I personally booked an event, multiple events at the church that I never spoke to Nikki Glekas at all. Did not have anything to do with her. I booked everything directly through Effie. Catered it on my own. Had nothing. I did not have to pay Effie. I did not have to go through. Nikki did not have to go through Effie. Didn't deal with her in any way, shape, or form. So, whatever information Ms. DeVito was giving earlier is not accurate at all. And furthermore, I think that to limit St. George from being able to help the community, which, don't get me wrong, I'm a member of the church. I'm a steward and I'm proud of it. But St. George Church, like most religious institutions in Norwalk, does a lot of good in the community. They feed the hungry. They help those who are in need. So to limit this institution in any way, shape, or form from being able to continue their mission, which has been distorted by certain people as a for-profit industry, is false. It's slander, and it shouldn't even be allowed to be on record here. My father, as Ms. DeVito's father, who I knew, and God rest him, was a steward and an original member of this community and the church, and helped do everything they could to create what we have now. None of them, not my dad, not Miss DeVito's dad, and not any other of the founding fathers of this church, would be against what this church is trying to do right now. And I think that to limit it to 30 events a year and to have off-duty police officers there to help keep everything in line and take care of the neighbors' concerns, which are valid concerns, by the way, and I don't disagree with them. But I think if there's safeguards put in place that will help make sure that the previous complaints are not repeated, I think that there is absolutely no reason that this permit should not be granted. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next, we have AP.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening. Can you state your name and address, please?
Yes, sir. Aliki Panagiotitis, 15 Honey Hill Road, Norwalk, Connecticut. I want to start off before I read off kind of my comments is, I want to thank Ms. DeVito for her commentary and her pictures, and the the ability for us to see this venue and what it has, brought to the community. In those pictures, I saw families, I saw kids, I saw adults, I saw people having a good time, as one does at an event. So we want to thank you. The community thanks you, Maria, for sure. So I want to state that throughout this process, I personally have not felt that discussion has been fully balanced or reflective of the long history and role of the church in this community. We have offered the concessions, of course, to meet all the rules and requirements, and in some cases, we'll go beyond them in an effort to address the concerns and work with good faith with the commission. So, we're not shying away from any, of the approvals or rules and requirements that you'll have us abide by. I understand that there's an effort to distinguish between parish events and outside use, but at times during this meeting tonight, it felt like the discussion was moving into what qualifies me as a member, a parishioner, et cetera. And I don't think that that's the forum for that type of discussion, as some of the board members were bringing up. I want to acknowledge that mistakes were made in the past, and whether it's the community, our neighbors, the board keeps bringing up our past mistakes, and we're well aware of them. We're paying the price for them, and now we're trying to make good and do good and take responsibility and address them and correct them for all parties involved, especially our neighbors. Because again, we want to be good neighbors and not have us be called, people that they put up with, or that our, place of worship is chaotic. Some of these disparaging remarks have been truly unfair and targeted. I also want to note that there have been public statements made about our church, disparaging comments made by, business owners that we strongly and truly believe are inaccurate and very serious in nature, including accusations that we completely reject. We do not believe those statements reflect the true facts. We are asking that this process remain focused on the zoning criteria and the use of the property, rather than personal allegations made by business owners and many or disputes outside the scope of this review. We are simply asking to be treated fairly. Some of the comments made about our church and community have been very disparaging and truly, troublesome. And I feel that we should, those should be stated for the record as well. I appreciate the opportunity to be heard, and we really, truly hope you guys pass this request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Lisa Henderson.
Hi, good evening. Lisa Henderson, Apple Tree Lane, Norwalk. I don't have a dog in this fight. I've actually only been paying attention to this for the past week or so. And I will say that it's sad to see community businesses and residents, at odds with each other. I do have a couple of comments watching this commission. And I feel that Ms. Wells has no right to discuss setting limits on how many congregants a church, a temple, a religious institution has in a day, a month, or a year. And I don't feel that that has anything to do with this commission. I think that Ms. Tabachak should worry more about the lack of blight in our blight and zoning issues in our city that have been allowed, for years to go without fines, never resolved, and also resolved issues that have come back and still are not being dealt with, and these people are not being
Ms.
fined.
Henderson,
Yes,
can you bring that back to this application?
I am
what's the
right
point?
now.
Okay,
I am right
thank
now.
you.
Good. Well, but those were comments that were made, just so you know. The church is bending over backwards to meet the requirements of the commission and should be taken for their word and faith and allowed this special permit. I thank you for allowing me to make comments tonight, and I do hope that you do the right thing for the church and the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have John Aslanides.
Hi, good evening. Hoping you can all hear me well. My name is John Aslanides. I'm the president of St. George, the president of the St. George Parish Council. Speaking on behalf of the Parish Council, I feel the need to address multiple inaccurate statements and significant false information and the way we're being characterized. I'm ignorant to the
If I
ways.
may, Mr. President, I ask you that you keep it related to the comment as it relates to the application.
I just heard a 10-minute diatribe. Why was that related? How was that related?
She was tying it to the event space.
Can I have the same 10 minutes, please?
You can certainly. I'm just asking that the subject matter relate to the application.
I saw no one trying to rein in her comments and her exhibits. I see a forum here where anybody can come up and say anything. I've heard comments that there's events every weekend, which are totally and categorically wrong and inaccurate. As a matter of fact, I would say we had a total of less than 24 formal events last year, significantly less than one every weekend. We have ministries going on constantly. We have youth groups that have events. We have bi-weekly traditional Greek dances that occur every Monday and Thursday. And these events are being conflated with either our own parishioners' events or other private party events. In addition, when an initial issue occurred that Mr. Rowena reached out to the city to complain, Father Nicholas, our presiding priest, reached out via Mr. Lathuris and asked him to come sit down and talk about it and apologize. We do not want to be abrasive or obnoxious neighbors. This is sincere. We are first and foremost a church. I'm not grandstanding, and this doesn't align to our values, but we cannot control the events of one event to reflect the entire community. It's one event. Any more than anybody else can have one event reflect the entire community, any community. We asked to speak to him. He refused to speak with us. I want to put that on record. He's also made multiple exaggerated and outrageous statements that apparently that don't require any backing. And also regarding to Mrs. Handrinos, I'm really sorry that she feels this way, But I want to go on record, speaking on behalf of myself and our presiding priest, Father Nicholas DeSuris, that her father was fully aware that we intended to rent this place, and he fully funded that with that understanding. I am confident that her father did not and would not share her sentiment. This is, I'm confident of this. I'm hoping that the board approves this. Again, we have taken, prior to this, I want to point something else. Prior to reaching out, we took steps initially, we being the parish council, we learned from our mistakes. We hired security, Metro Guard, a large security agency, David Ferris, retired lieutenant from New Canaan, to be able to police the situation, recognize that we would need help controlling this. This was not because the city asked us. This is not because legal counsel asked us. This is because we wanted to be good stewards and good neighbors. The way we've been portrayed and characterized is not just, and apparently anybody can come and slander us, and I use the word slander on purpose, and not have to substantiate any claims. None of you would tolerate that. We won't tolerate that. If you're going to make claims, please back them up. I asked this Planning and Zoning Committee to objectively look at this. We put in we worked with the Planning and Zoning, worked with our attorney to work with the city, and objectively look at this and give us the opportunity to demonstrate that we plan to abide and to be good stewards. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to apologize for interjecting, as your comments were absolutely in line with what we were looking for this evening.
Next couple of speakers look like they spoke at the last meeting, so just a reminder that it has to be related to the new material that was presented tonight. So with that, we have Ellen Passero.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Okay.
Can you state your name and address?
Yes, Ellen Passero, 228 West Rocks Road. So I am a direct neighbor sharing the property line with the church. And I did speak last time, and so I want to be very short and concise with my comments. And first of all, I want to clarify, because as I said last time, there is absolutely no concern with the church and with religious celebrations. Obviously, no concern for funerals, meetings, and celebrations within the church community. That is what neighbors agreed to back in 2006 when the church came to us as a neighborhood to ask for approval for the building. The clear issue that remains with us right now is the noise from events that have live music. And you could see from the videos and the other pictures that were shared that live music is significant. That is the concern for the neighbors, and it has been expressed by numerous people. Our position is to use the Norwalk Noise Ordinance, and that's clear that we support the church and the church activities, but it is also clear that as citizens of Norwalk, we intend to commit to the Norwalk Noise Ordinance regarding live music. That's our right based on the ordinance that was carefully developed by the Common Council and with safeguards that will eliminate. I don't think that any of the safeguards that the church is speaking to can eliminate the 45 decibel sound for neighbors. So I just wanted to be concise. It is certainly, I am disturbed by the implication that it is anything against the church or religion. We've said that from the beginning. And this to me is very clearly an issue of live music and the application of the Norwalk Noise Ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Richard.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Can you share your name and address?
This is Richard Rowena, 6 Bain Street, Norwalk, Connecticut. I just wanted to say a couple of things about the restrictions or conditions that were proposed by Attorney Bernheim. First of all, he indicates that there are no restrictions on the church events that are happening, and they shouldn't be included in the number of events that are going to be happening. And I think that the lawyer part of me has to jump into the rabbit hole along with Mr. Bernheim and Steve Kleppen and say that if the live music is truly a non-conforming use, then two things are applicable. He is asking for a modification to a special permit, so you can put whatever conditions you want on it. I'm going to say we, because you all know I used to be on the commission, did that on occasion to modify a special permit. The other thing I want to say is that if this is in fact a non-conforming use, making this an event center and increasing the number of times that the live music is going to be played is what we call in the law business an intensification of a non-conforming use. So I think those arguments are specious at best. But what I really wanted to say is back up a little bit what Ellen Passero had to say, and that is what we are really concerned about is the noise. It was really interesting for me to hear Mr. President, I don't remember his name. Yes, I was invited by Mr. Lathoris to meet with the priest. But when was that? It was 2 days after I filed the formal complaint with the zoning department. Nobody talked to me for the 18 months preceding that I was in contact with Mr. Lathoris. His answer to everything was, I'll discuss it with the elders, and I never heard from anybody. So are my complaints unsubstantiated and without merit, with no background? This is the night, if you can hear this, at 1:15 a.m. when I contacted Mr. Lathoris, but he was in Greece, I think. Shortly after that, I filed my formal complaint with Mr. Kleppen. I think it was at about 1:30 in the morning. I inadvertently, I don't even know how I had this email address. I'm going to stop this. I don't even know I have this address, but I sent it to his New Canaan by mistake. So he got it Monday morning. That was at 1:15. At 7 o'clock in the morning, in order for the parishioners to come to a clean parking lot, there were 2 leaf blowers that woke me up. I don't usually sleep till 7 o'clock, but I was up at 3 watching the trucks moving the equipment out. So the next one, if you want to hear another one, this is the one that my neighbor went over and asked them if they could turn the music down. And they told him to get lost. They're having a party. So if Mr. President wants to talk to me about backing it up, I got like 25 more of these. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to get angry, but that was beyond the pale. 18 months I've been trying to get them to talk to me, and they have not. Now they want to talk to me after I filed the complaint. I am not the Emperor of Norwalk. I made the complaint. I can't, how do they put that? Put the genie back in the bottle. No matter what I agree with Peter Lathoris or the elders, it has no bearing on your decision. So anyway, that's what I want to say. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Next, we have Nikki Glikas. Nikki, you just have to unmute.
We can't hear you if you're speaking, Ms. Glikas.
Nikki, there's a icon at the bottom of your screen. It looks like a microphone. You click that once to unmute.
While she's doing that, I'll note for the record that JJ has joined the meeting at 7:50. Good evening, JJ.
Nikki, we will come back to you. Next, we have Bulas.
Hi, my name is Angelica Bullis. My address is 114 George Avenue. I'm a 19-year-old who would like to speak on behalf of the youth and who has spent many of my childhood years at St. George. I attended Greek school, dance practice, and the Greek youth organization Goya. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. As Ms. DeVito mentioned, she grew up around St. George. I believe restricting these events is destroying the youth's community. These events include church events and other Greek events. I believe that this is destroying our community, our Greek community for the youth. I think the youth needs to be considered in these choices since we are the future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that Mr. Oslanides raised his hand again. We're only giving folks one opportunity to speak tonight. Is Miss? It looks like Nikki has rejoined here. Hopefully, we're able to get her audio working.
Nikki, let's try.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry.
Can you state your name and address, please?
Nikki Glekis, 20 Bridge Street of Westport. I would explain who I am, but you obviously already heard who I am. So I just would like to express to the committee that I really think that I would like to encourage them to allow specific events at the hall. And I did really want to speak on behalf of the church as I am a member. And I am going to also use the word slander, as John also mentioned the same word, because it's disheartening to hear a lot of things that Maria said, or Ms. DeVito, if you want me to address her like that. They were a lot of extremely false accusations. And I really apologize to the neighbor across the street or the gentleman that spoke earlier about the noise. He's as a complete valid statement about noise should be within a period of time with a cap, and no one's disagreeing with him. So I really do apologize about that. I just want to state about some of the false things that were mentioned. She mentioned my daughter's Sweet 16. I just want to really mention that I am a member of the church. I am there to help the church. And with whatever sources I've been helping them, it's really about the commercial kitchen use. All the ladies of Philoptohos and the different members of the church community will tell you there's a lot of commercial kitchen equipment in there. And I was there to help them, and I still am there to help them. And I think that putting a limit on the events and the timing and the security are all smart and necessary things to do. I also think that it's upsetting to see that somebody's saying, you know, there's a video going around, which is complete slander about I'm serving liquor. First of all, I'm completely licensed. I'm a licensed caterer. I'm a licensed liquor permit. I have a travel liquor permit. I hold an high insurance policy. I was there to produce members' weddings, which were beautiful this year. And like John mentioned earlier, I think I was there for like 5 events last year. So that's a little bit false that there's an event every weekend. I think that parameters make total sense. I also just want everybody to understand that there's a lot of words going around about for-profit, non-for-profit, all of these things. I just want everyone to be very clear. Church needs money to survive. The mortgage is not free. And so I feel like it's disheartening to hear all these people saying, oh, you know, this isn't, we're not saying anything against the church. You kind of are, because they own that hall. And I feel bad for the church, because without money, they won't be able to pay their mortgage. And then in which case they will be in a big hardship for their community. I think that there's a lot of reasonable things that everyone mentioned tonight. I think there's a ton of false information, and I'm happy to, you know, state all of those, but I really don't think that I should speak for 18 minutes like Maria did. I just think that it's really important that people know that not everything that was mentioned was accurate. And I did not grow up in the church, but I am a Greek Orthodox Christian. I am a member of St. George. I would help any Greek in any situation or anybody of the Norwalk community. And I just feel like, you know, there's a lot of things that could be done that could be amazing at that community center. And I don't know any institution, Greek, non-Greek, synagogue, non-synagogue, that doesn't use their hall for multiple use. I think they all do because I know that they need certain support. So I think within restrictions would be awesome. So I just urge the board to hear that and to understand that this is an important thing for the community. And I really feel bad for anybody that heard any kind of loud noise late at night. I would be upset by that too. So I apologize for that. I wasn't a part of it, but I do apologize on behalf of the church. And I hope that you consider doing this modification. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll do one more last call for anyone who'd like to speak. If you would like to, please use the raise your hand tool at the bottom of your screen. And if you're dialed in on a phone, you would hit *9. With that, we have a phone number ending in 5067.
Can you hear me?
We can. Can you please state your name and address?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Peter Lothoris. I happen to be the attorney for the Church for St. George. I also happen to be a parishioner for St. George for over 55 years. Chris Handrinos was my uncle. I'm sure that you read a lot of things and a lot of comments. I will not address any of them, only to say that I'm very saddened for my family and I'm very saddened for St. George. Unfortunately, things have gotten very personal and frankly beyond the issue that's before this board. I want to remind the board that yes, St. George has made a mistake, not the church, not its leaders, but some people that use the hall did not abide by the rules, did not consider the neighbors. Mr. Rowena is correct. That did happen. All we can do is apologize and present to this board steps that this church, this leadership, Mr. Azulinides, the parish council, Father DeSouras, myself, are more than willing to abide and to have these restrictions enforced. Frankly, they're not restrictions, it's common sense. You don't disturb your neighbor at 1:30 in the morning. And I want to emphasize to the board, because of the emotions involved and the issues involved, the church already has a permit to operate the community hall. I would say 90% of the usage is by members. And it is for religious purposes, it is for cultural purposes. There is no restriction as to what the members can use it for. They can use it for their wedding. They can use it for music. None of these acts, none of these events are restricted. All we are asking the commission to do is to consider our plea that we would like to be able to, because of the confusion on what is a member or is not a member, is to clarify and allow us to have technically non-Greek Orthodox members. It's a very confusing issue, frankly. I think it's a very legally it's a very important situation here, because being Greek Orthodox and partaking in some of these activities that we do is it is part of our faith. And I think it's improper for any governmental entity to interfere. And I respect and I appreciate what this board and the comments that were made before that said, look, there's certain areas that we cannot get into. These are religious areas. We're not here to split hair and to try to find this act is religious, it's not religious, it's part of the Greek religion, or it's not part of the Catholic religion or whatever. All we're asking the board is allow us to host 30 events a year that are technically are not members. people that are maybe outside our parish. I will report to you that Father Nick has told me, the parish council told me, many of these events, people come to explore, even though they're not members, they come to explore our cultural heritage, our religion, and a lot of them have converted. I don't think we want to go down that road to try to determine whether someone is coming to the church for religious purposes or for social purposes or cultural purposes. I think it is a very dangerous road to go down from a First Amendment and religious purposes. Yes, absolutely impose the restrictions that have been discussed. Time restrictions, noise restrictions, security restrictions. All of those should be imposed, and the church has to abide by them, just like every other citizen in Norwalk abides by them. But please keep track of the issue in front of you. The issue is not, can the church have events there? Of course it can. It can have 5,000 events a year there if they are members. That's what its permit says. Nobody can take that away. All we're asking is, due to our finances, due to our commitments to the community and to the help that this church provides, we need some income. We have a $2 million mortgage that we must pay. And all we ask is allow us to be able to clearly and openly and not have to see if a person is a member, make them a member, make them pay a fee so that they are a member. Allow us to have the usage by anyone, member or non-member, restricted to 30 events, and allow us to make use of our facility for the whole community and for the ultimate benefit of our church. I think it's very important that the commission focus on this issue, what's really before you. It is not whether we can have these events there. The only issue before the commission is, will we allow them to have 30 non-member events? That's all. Thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Next, we have solicited Zoom user.
Good evening. My name is Lefteri Saropoulos. I would like to address the commission. I also want to thank the commission for taking out a marathon event with us.
Can you please state your address for us?
275 Post Road, Westport, Connecticut.
Thank you. Please continue.
I'm not going to add any more commentary to whatever's going on. We made some statements. There's been some good fact checking. There's been a lot of allegations. But one thing I want to note, that currently I'm a vice president of St. George Greek Orthodox Church. I've been a president in the past. I've been a treasurer in the past. During COVID, we had restrictions on how many people can come into the church. My job was to be a host at the church. There is no such thing. I cannot sit there and say, there's 100 people allowed. There is no, you're a member, you're not a member. When did you pay? How Christian are you? You're more Christian. Get out, come inside. I had to tell my parents that they couldn't come in. If you didn't meet the cutoff, that's it. There was no, you're Christian, you're Jew. Oh, you're Jewish, you can't come in. I can't say that. I cannot violate anyone's First Amendment right. And I just want to make that as a statement, that as a host of St. George Greek Orthodox Church, whoever walks in, no matter what color, race, I welcome them as hello. The question doesn't ever come out, how Christian are you? When has your last time you've taken communion? I don't have the right to ask those questions. And it's offensive if anyone asks me those questions. And to me, to ask that question to someone, I don't feel comfortable. And that's the only statement I want to make at this point in time.
Thank you.
Turn it back over to you, Chairman Rice.
Thank you. At this time, we'll close the public participation component of tonight's hearing. Given that it's 8:05, I propose that we take a 10-minute break and then resume with the response from the applicant and further discussion from the commission. Is anyone opposed to taking a break and resuming at 8:15? Wonderful. We will recess until then. All right. Good evening. We are returning from our recess. We had just concluded the public comment portion of tonight's public hearing. I'd like to now turn it over to Attorney Bernheim to respond to the public comments that were made tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. I think you heard 3 different types of comments. Several, I would think the majority actually were comments in favor of this application, asking you to impose reasonable conditions and allow for the use that we're proposing, which are some private non-parishioner events, as we had originally proposed. The longest comment you heard was from, quite frankly, a competitor who doesn't want the competition. Did not really address anything other than the commercial nature of it and how it would impact her business and why she was upset about it. And I think that's really irrelevant to this consideration. The third were from, again, a couple of rightfully so disgruntled neighbors concerned about how this will impact their use and enjoyment of their properties. And we are completely on board with everything that they said. And again, our biggest concern with the decision tonight is to ensure that there are enough reasonable conditions to ensure that those neighbors are not adversely impacted in the future. And the church council has assured me that they are, obviously fully aware of everything that Mr. Rowena and Mr. Passero have said, and they want to be good neighbors. They do not want ongoing parties until 1:30 in the morning with rude individuals yelling at their neighbors. That's not their goal or objective. And I think many of the parishioners made that clear to you in their sentiment and their comments. So I think the conditions that we proposed will protect the neighbors. I think the conditions that staff put in their staff report that we went through would protect the neighbors. But it got me thinking to maybe one other thing that would make you all comfortable is if this were somewhat of a probationary approval where you impose those conditions that we've discussed, allowed the church to have some non-parishioner events for the next 6 months with these conditions, and then we have to come back before the commission to review how those have been working. And if they've been working great, we continue on. If they're not working, we either fix them or you put back the original condition that we can only have church members as part of the event. And I think what that does is it shows you that we're serious about this, that we're not trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes, the neighbors or yours. And it shows that we have a chance to prove to you that we can operate how we know we can operate with these conditions. And if people are leaving by 10 or 11 o'clock, depending on the day, with the Norwalk Police Department enforcing the noise ordinance and as our private security, that this can operate consistently with the other synagogues and churches and private water clubs and so on and so forth, all of which, or not all of which, but many of which, especially the private water clubs, are operating in residential zones and having events for non-members and local business organizations and the such. And we're just trying to be treated similarly to those other organizations and clubs and the such. And we're not trying to handcuff you with, this is your one bite at the apple. So we would propose that probationary approval with the conditions that your staff recommends. And then we come back and we show you how we've been able to be good operators.
Thank you. Are there questions for Attorney Bernheim or for staff at this time? Or any comments or discussion following the public hearing?
Just keep in mind, you get to speak with Attorney Bernheim at this point in time, but once that piece is closed, we don't get to go back and ask him any questions. It's just a conversation among the commission and staff at that juncture.
Yes. Thank you, Steve. That's a great clarification.
Attorney Bernheim, do you know how many events in calendar 2025 and into 2026, if I'm just going to use the term non-parishioner events, were held in the community building? This
I don't know well, if you bear with me a minute, I may be able to find.
nighttime events. I'm not talking about like the daycare that's there or the study groups during the day, not that type of event, but a large social evening events.
I believe there was approximately 7 events that were organized by Nikki Galekis. Maybe there were a couple others that came in through the church. So I would say about 10 private non-parishioner events in the evening hours.
Thank you.
Attorney Bernheim, and I want to apologize for my statement before. I didn't mean to be flip or rude. There was a commenter, I think maybe a vice president or an assistant president, somebody not quite the president, who was speaking about, it sounded like speaking about the difficulty or the inability to distinguish between who actually is a parishioner and who's not a parishioner. And I'm like I said, I'm not interested in trying to define that in zoning regulations, but do you feel like the church would be able to, with, if the special permit was opened up to everybody, but there's certain restrictions for non-parishioners that don't apply to the parishioners, do you feel like the church is able to clearly define who's a parishioner and a non-parishioner to effectuate that structure?
Yeah, I think there's a list of parishioners. I'm sure they have a donor list, right? So they have members of the church. I think what he was saying was when somebody comes in the door, you're not necessarily asking them when they come to church, which I understand and I agree completely. You're not going to try to make somebody uncomfortable by, what are you doing here? Type of thing. But if you're trying to host an event, I think the church can have some questions. I think that's legitimate. There could be a form that needs to be completed. And clearly, if Mr. Lathoris is having an event, he's a parishioner. He's on the council, right? If I was having an event, clearly I'm not a parishioner. And I think there's questions that could be asked during that process when you're filling out the form. There will be a formal process for booking the space. If we're, today, even for parishioners, there's a formal process. There's got to be a calendar, right? You can't have multiple people showing up at a whim. So we can certainly, we can figure out the best way to do that. And we could even work with staff to show them the type of form and, maybe even do a quarterly reporting to staff as to the number of non-parishioner events that have occurred. Or if staff asks us at some point because they got a complaint, we can keep a log so that it's something available to show who was there when and was it parishioner or non-parishioner.
Harvey?
Yeah, Attorney Bernheim, I know I'm beating a bit of a dead horse here, but just we're like all agreed at this point that a member of the public who had no previous affiliation with the church, who could not join the church for the sole purpose of hosting an event like at the church venue. Like we're all agreed on that point at this juncture.
Yes, we are aligned there. We cannot find a loophole in saying Bernheim family, if you want to have an event, pay $100 and now you're a parishioner and you can rent it.
Yeah, thank you. And then to the staff, do we feel like the proposed conditions or other mechanisms are sufficient to kind of guarantee and like ratify that?
I'll never place a guarantee on something like that. I'm the conditions proposed, I'm comfortable with.
Okay, comfortable is better than guarantee, sure.
Yeah, I would definitely avoid trying to define who's a parishioner and who's not a parishioner. I'm thinking from an enforcement standpoint, that would just be a nightmare. I think you've got to decide basically, do we allow these outside events or do we not allow these outside events? And that's how you define it. And then wrap your arms around what the hours of operation are appropriate or not appropriate, and then any other safeguards you think you can put in there. Getting things where they're too wishy-washy or leaving things up to too much interpretation is just going to lead to more problems down the road.
Understood. But then I'd go back to my prior concern, which is that almost all of the restrictions explicitly only apply to non-parishioner events at this point. So like it seems very material to me that there is like some agreement about that, or like.
Well, we do have a list of parishioners. We have a list of members. So, if push came to shove and we got a notice from staff that said there was an event on, Cinco de Mayo, we need to know, was it a parishioner event or not a parishioner event? Show us the contract or show us the form that was filled out for it, and then, correlate it with the member list. Then we can, there's a path forward. I mean, I realize again, we're going down a little bit of a rabbit hole here. I think we are aligned that there's no loophole to whether you're a parishioner or not. And we're comfortable that we would be able to satisfy staff, Steve and his team, that if it's going to be considered a parishioner event by us, that we're going to be able to prove to him and he's going to agree with us.
Eric, is there like a cutoff time for all events that could apply instead of just differentiating them between parishioner and non-parishioner?
Too.
Can we just take a straight cutoff time for events?
I'm waiting for the three dots to turn into words. So bear with me.
I agree with you on the enforceability side of that. And I'm not sure what an appropriate cutoff time would be at this point, but the other approach, or maybe in tandem, is looking at the live music piece with that cutoff time. If there's a midnight service, as like some religions may have, we want to make sure we're not impeding on that. But the live music or adherence to the noise ordinance is the thing that we can focus on, and ensuring that that's adhered to for these events.
And they will agree to the cutoff time applying for all. I do think tying it to the live music is key, but they're willing to say that the 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock hours are the cutoff time. Obviously, that wouldn't apply, again, the rabbit hole that we've been talking about all night, that wouldn't apply to if they're having a midnight mass for Christmas or something of that sort. Like that can't be seen as they can't do that, right? But for some sort of an event in the community center that's, not a religious ceremony, I guess, those hours, they would agree to those.
I think
it seems to me like
it doesn't
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Anna. It doesn't have to be live music, but it's any music, because amplified music from a stereo or whatever you want to call it can be just as loud as a live band. So I think the music.
And your defined term, live music, capital L, capital M, is like a live band, a DJ, or amplified music. So it covers everything. So when I say live music, I'm not talking about just the band. I'm talking about amplified music that is coming through speakers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I still not crazy about all the conditions, but I feel like it makes more sense to me to have the conditions be about event rentals, right? This is essentially like, we're not talking about church activities. We're not talking about midnight mass. We're talking about renting the event space that normally that was approved through a special process, a special permit process, because it was not a normal thing, right? And at the time, there were no conditions about time, things end and number and amplified or this or that or the other, but it was restricted to members. And now we're saying, A, we should have some conditions because there have been problems in the neighborhood and conditions are smart. And they want to be able to rent it to non-members. So I think if we're going to have conditions, it should just be for event rentals. And then you can answer the question, yes or no, should they be allowed to rent to non-members as like a separate thing?
I agree with that analysis. Yes, yeah, I agree with that. And I think I see it a step further of, I think that's something we should be looking at the CD1L and looking at as a text amendment and being thoughtful about how that applies more broadly to all religious facilities, right? Not just to this particular one.
I'm not sure if this is where Anna was going, but like it makes more sense to me that the conditions attached to payment than to some one-off definition of who's a congregation member.
That's a really great way of doing it, because if it is truly a church function related to a ceremony, there won't be any payment made to the church. If it's even, Attorney Lathoris and his family having a, engagement party, or not an engagement party, anniversary party, then he is going to be paying the church for the right to use that facility for that party, right? So, I mean, I think that's a really clever way of figuring out when are the conditions imposed and timelines and so on and so forth.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I think then you need to, well, we have Attorney Bernheim here, that one of the conditions, which I think was based off what he drafted, talks about the non-parishioner events being religious or youth-related activities. So some of the things that have actually occurred there already seem like they don't fall in that category. So that language would have to be removed if that's the request and intent.
I was never crazy about that language.
I find it's challenging to clearly define those categories in the same way it was difficult to define the member piece, right? There was that loophole for the member, like I feel like there's a loophole for the what's a religious event. Yeah.
Okay.
But I agree with you, Steve, that would need to change. Are there other questions, comments, discussion that we wish to have before we close the public hearing?
I have a question, Steve, related to something Richard said and something that Attorney Bernheim, I think maybe had said or implied. We can revise their existing special permit related to the conditions of events or without changing the fact that it's currently limited to members, correct?
In what way? What do you think?
Well, we could say, looking at this special permit, we don't think there's reason to open it to non-members. And based on the violation that came in, or based on how things happen in Norwalk these days and what we did with Silvermine or whatever, we think these conditions should be attached to your member only event rentals. Like, I'm not proposing we do that, but theoretically we can do that, right?
I'll answer it the way I think you're asking the question. The existing special permit that they have, that for you to like retract that or try to take that away would be a completely separate process. I don't think you could impose additional conditions on that approval. That approval stands. You could make the statement that they are in violation of that and then take action that way. But I think if they, from this point forward, say they withdrew their current request, they didn't do any outside events, that special permit would stand, provided that they, didn't violate the terms of those conditions of those approval.
Okay.
That makes sense.
A little bit, but I
Right.
think that's
Can
more
I
me than
comment?
you.
Can I comment? My thoughts on that, my opinion. I think Steve said it properly. I'll try to say it a little bit differently. More articulately, please. Differently. If you want to modify our current permit, you have to start a separate action against us and establish a record as to why you're entitled to do that. It's a legally protected use right now. So if you're going to take away what we already have, you have to do that in a certain format. And there's a legal burden, which I couldn't recite to you right now as to why and when you could do that. But I don't think this is the mechanism for you to do that. So I don't think, I think the way that you can rule on this application is either approve it with conditions or deny it. And then we have what we have from 2006. If you want to change what we have from 2006, you'd have to talk to your corporation counsel as to how do we rescind or limit what they have from 2006. Is that?
And that makes more sense. And Steve, so if we wanted to approve this application with conditions, could those conditions apply to member events as well?
Potentially. I think there's something else that's a side piece to this that you'd have to be very careful of. I think you'd need to be along those lines for the member events. I think you'd have to be very careful that you're not imposing conditions that you didn't bring up in this form already, or kind of that would be kind of more restrictive than what you've already granted to him in the prior approval. And I say you, I'm talking about the commission when it was granted in, I think 06 or whenever it was initially granted.
Yeah, I wasn't born.
Yeah.
Okay. So we couldn't do a change. We couldn't say it's approved with the conditions that for any event rentals, this is how it works. And
Well, I think for event rentals, yes, because that is basically what their request is tonight, is to allow the rental piece, because the prior approval said you can't use it for the outside events. So if they wanted to start renting it on any scale, you could attach conditions to that.
I thought they're asking to rent it to non-members. They're currently allowed to rent it to members.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would phrase it rent it to members. I would say used in conjunction with church related activities.
Okay. I'm sorry. I think I'm going down the wrong path. I'm getting myself confused.
If I can add to that, Hannah, so the condition reads, the existing condition from 2006, condition number 10 reads, the hall be used for church members only and not be rented out for any events. And so the way I'm reading that is it's used for the members and may not be rented. And so if we did take a approval route and impose conditions, it would be relaxing and expanding their capability to then rent a place. And therefore we could attach additional conditions as to what a rental looks like and what parameters it needs to operate within. Does that clarify. And, Attorney Bernheim and Steve, please keep me honest on that interpretation, but that's my layman's interpretation of it.
Chapin,
Go ahead, Tammy.
regardless of anything, the city noise ordinances apply no matter what. So I think we don't need to try to reinvent that wheel.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, although I think too the point that Attorney Rowena made was we have in the past imposed conditions beyond the what the noise ordinance requires for applicants when it was due to a sensitive use in a given zone and in the context of where it was in a special permit. I believe, I'm trying to remember of a specific example, but I know that we've had this discussion before and that we've imposed requirements beyond the noise ordinance before.
Yeah, and I think one of the conditions that we crafted as part of this, and which I believe Attorney Bernheim had agreed to, and I'm paraphrasing here, was that basically for whatever the hours were, that all operations would cease, meaning that the people are out of the parking lot, the catering truck's gone, the band's, not outside hanging out for 15 minutes shooting the breeze. That, the site's kind of basically dormant at that point in time, and it's not the event concludes at 11 and 2 hours later they're packing up and closing shop.
Excuse me. Are there further questions or comments while the public hearing is still open? As a reminder, once we close it, we cannot ask Attorney Bernheim anything new, and we can't introduce any new information into the record. All right, Attorney Bernheim, do you have anything else you'd like to present this evening?
No, I just thank the commission for their time. I know this is a touchy subject and we all want to get it right. I do. Nobody commented to me on the kind of the probationary period approach, but we do feel like that will give you some assurances that, if you approve this, that it's not gone forever. We want to prove to you that we can operate this consistently with these reasonable conditions that staff had put in their staff report, and happy to come back and show you that we've done that and we've been good neighbors and better neighbors than we had been in the past, especially now that we're so fully aware of everything. So we thank you for your time and hope that you grant us the same requests that so many other operators in residential zones are benefiting from currently with the waterfront clubs and the other religious institutions that don't have similar restrictions to what we have. We are fully on board with compliance with the noise ordinance. Norwalk Police Department has private security to ensure, and I think you did hear from neighbors that when the police were there that it did get better. So we hope that this will ensure that everything is better at that point, in the conditions that Steve and his team crafted in response to ours. So thank you for your time, and we hope for an approval. Thank you.
Thank you. And while I didn't comment on the probationary piece, I do appreciate you offering that. Look forward to contemplating that during our deliberations. Galen, did you have something? I saw your hand go up for a moment. No? Okay. So with that, unless there's anything else, I will close the public hearing. Earlier, I made a remark that I hadn't had a chance to completely review the letters that came in today. During the break, I had a chance to finish the last few pages. I'm unsure if others have had a chance to finish reviewing those letters, though. If someone is feeling that they're need more time to review those, I'd welcome a motion to continue, as much as I would prefer to put a conclusion to this tonight. But I see that Lou has his hand up, so please go ahead, Lou.
Thank you. I'd like to make a couple of comments. First, I'm more than a little annoyed that the attorney that heard this violation didn't reach a decision, but allowed this matter to go forward in the way in which it has. You know, if there's violation on a property, that plays a role in meeting or not meeting the criteria for approval of a special permit. So I think that in the future, we have to encourage the attorneys that hear these cases to hear them fully before they agree to move forward with a special permit, which basically gets them off the hook. I don't blame the applicant for this. I blame the attorney. So there's that. Second, again, I believe a violation does exist on the property. Virtually all of the letters in support of the church's position have come from church members. There are a very small number of supportive letters that come from outside of the church community. And virtually all of the letters opposed, again, with just a few exceptions, come from neighbors. I don't think we should lose sight of that. Despite that, I think the church can be forgiven for its past practices. And for me, this has never been about the church. It's been about the impact that this request will have across the city. It is not just West Rocks Road, it is across the entire city with all of the other religious institutions in our community, or many of the religious institutions within our community. So that, for example, with regard to having a probationary period, I think it's meaningless. It may well be that you have a probationary period, and the St. George becomes a wonderful neighbor. But what about all the other institutions that have taken advantage of this change and may not be? I don't think we can look at it just as this church requesting a special permit. It's a special permit that will affect the entire city of Norwalk. And as a result, I personally, whether we act tonight or act at our next meeting, I personally cannot support this request.
Thank you for your comments. Are there other comments from commissioners? Are there any motions for this application? Galen?
Move to continue this till our next meeting.
Okay. That would be a continuation to our May 20th meeting. Is there a second for that motion?
Maybe not.
I'll call again for a second before I mark it as a failed motion, but go ahead, Tammy.
Ask if we continue it, are we as commissioners are going to continue our conversation? So if people have things to say, they should say it now. Maybe people didn't have enough time. There was a lot of material that did come in today in those emails and packets. Some of them were highly repetitive. But we're not going to hear from the attorney again. So it's just us. I mean, maybe we want to think about it a little bit more. I'm not sure.
Sure, right, because as of a few minutes ago, we closed all additional input to our deliberations. So you're right, it would be continued on. And, yeah.
And one quick, to butt in quickly, just to make sure that if you I think if I recall correctly, everybody that's present tonight was at the prior meeting. In order to vote on this, you would have needed to sit through all the public testimony for the two hearings, as well as, ideally read all the materials. I know it got a lot sent out today, and that's just because the nature of when it came in. So, I mean, don't feel to rush it. You have 35 days to render a decision from the close. So there's not a rush. And I don't think your next agenda is that full where you can't spend some time further discussing.
Okay. JJ, I believe you joined partway through today's meeting at least. So if we continue, I hope you're able to catch up and then we'd be able to participate.
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to just add that I agree with the first part of what Lou said in looking at the document around enforcement, the summary, sort of description memo written by Ian Hall. This may just be the language chosen, but it appears that they identified this violation and then staff informed the church that a modification of their special permit will need to be taken out. Like, maybe that's just shorthand, but I feel like there's a violation, resolve the violation, assess a fine, and then if an applicant wants to do some other thing, but I feel like this isn't the first time we've seen a violation attempt to be cured by making a change to something. And it often appears that it's sort of at the recommendation of staff, or it's the idea of staff, or like, okay, you've got this violation, this is your option. These are your 5 options for how to, as opposed to like, stop it, fix it, pay it, and then maybe in the future, something. So I sign on to that comment from.
To expand on that, maybe this would be more appropriate to have in the discussion portion of our meeting. But I know Steve and team have put together a flow chart to help provide guidance for zoning violation hearings. But I think that was put together after this, if I'm looking at the date on this from Mr. Hall.
Just a quick comment on that. We can't tell them that they can't seek this as that is an option available to them. We do kind of try to guide them there. But in all honesty, since this is a church, we would give the church a little more deference than we would give a guy within a legal contractor yard. We do treat them a little bit differently in terms of our response and how heavy-handed we might be.
So we have a motion to continue. Is there a second for this motion? I'll call one more time for that before I'll call it as failed. Is there a second for this motion?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, JJ. Let's take a vote by a show of hands for continuing this application. Is there any discussion before we continue?
Yeah, Chapin, I'd like to make a quick statement. Neither Chapin nor Galen are going to be available for our next meeting on May 20th. That means that I will be chairing the meeting. For anyone who's been on the commission for any amount of time, you know that I will be fair and honest, but I just thought I ought to mention that given the fact that I've already stated what my position is on this matter.
I appreciate that, Lou. Thank you for sharing that.
And you can continue it out past that too if you wanted to.
Okay. From a statutory, like we could go potentially to a meeting in June or hold a special meeting to conclude this. Is that right?
Yeah, you don't have to do it at your next meeting, so that's fine.
Okay. Would it be appropriate, just for scheduling sake, to continue this to our May 20th meeting just for notice, and then we can continue it further?
Well, you closed the public hearing, right, Chapin?
Oh, right. So we don't need to notice any further.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily need even a motion. As long as the public hearing's been closed, then we now have a new timer of 65 days for you guys to render a decision. So if no decision is reached tonight, then it goes on to an agenda for you guys to do that.
Okay. Lou, I think you finished your comment. Tammy?
Yet I'm concerned that both Chapin and Galen wouldn't be at the meeting for the vote, since you both have participated in, all of the previous information received. I would imagine it's just coincidental that you're not going to be here, and not intentional that perhaps one of you or both of you don't want to actually vote on this application.
To put that to rest, I've been contemplating like joining from the vacation where I'm going to get in trouble for joining this meeting in order to vote on it if it goes to the next meeting, because
I joined from San Juan when you were in San Juan.
I know. Thanks, Harvey.
Sorry, right into the
yes,
class.
if this is continued to our May meeting and we wish to hear it there, I'll do my best to show up, because I do want to partake in this application. I would appreciate being able to hear it at a later date if the commission so chooses. But go ahead, Galen. I see you want to respond to that.
I hold it forward to the meeting after the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that's fine. To Brian's point, I don't think we need to pick.
Because I cannot
specific-
come on the 20th under any circumstances.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, neither can I. I will be out of town on the 20th.
Okay.
I was going to log in late, but I don't know if that would help. But if you can push it till June, I'll definitely be at the June meeting.
Okay, so we will target a June date then. And Tammy, I hope that resolves your concern. Thank you for raising it, because I do worry about the impression that would leave. So thank you for flagging that.
Yes, it does. And then just so we all know, we haven't actually voted on whether we're going to extend this or not.
Correct.
We're still discussing.
Yes.
I mean, what is the motivation for extension? Is it to give people more time to review materials or some other reason?
Yeah, it was the 44 pages of materials that came in today. I fortunately had an opportunity to finish reading it during our break, but if anyone felt that they didn't have sufficient time to review that material and would like to do so before they make a vote, that was my recommendation for the continuation of the hearing. So that way we made sure we took all the public comment in before rendering a decision.
Right. And then the things that came in today were neighbor correspondences for 238 West Rocks, 238 West Rocks correspondences 5126, and places of worship list. Those are the new items.
Those were,
go ahead.
The only thing that came today was what I emailed out.
Okay.
Unless I didn't have you on the email, but that would have been.
He was not on the email.
So you definitely didn't
know.
That's my
Steve, is what you emailed out in the meeting materials online?
No, because it just mailed everything that was posted last week. So no, that
Okay.
It's been uploaded to the web page now, but it's not in the meeting agenda packet.
So to be clear, I read everything.
Good.
But I think it's helpful for folks to know, if you're looking at the agenda the way I am, that the emailed stuff is not there.
Yeah, we had stuff coming up until like 2:30 or so today. So that.
Yeah, 24 hours ahead of time, I can't edit the agenda packet, so it gets locked.
Oh, okay.
How dare you?
That's good to know. Thank you for highlighting that, Brian.
So, Chapin or Steve, somebody mentioned that the letter that the city sent to the applicant about the violation, and is that I'm not seeing that in the online information. Where
Second thing,
it's in
2006 SP.
What is it?
The second item in the meeting materials, it says 2006 SP and enforcement docs.
Oh, thank you, Anna. Okay.
Starts with the original special permit.
Oh, yeah.
Notice that was sent, and then the summary.
I wasn't calling it the right thing. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Are there additional comments or conversation?
Let's do it. Let's vote on it.
Yes, let's do this by a show of hands. All those in favor of continuing to a date to be determined. Right, that is 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. All those opposed? All those abstaining? Tammy, Anna? Okay. Can I ask the reasons for abstention on that?
Sure. I just really am ambivalent about
Okay.
spending more time on it or not. So I don't have a good reason one way or the other. So that's why I'm abstaining.
I appreciate that.
Similar, I don't see any reason to extend it, but I'm not like against extending it if everybody else wants to either.
Appreciate that. I too want to hear this and close it tonight, but I think with the volume of letters and the folks have taken time to submit comments to us, and I would really like to make sure we're considering that in our deliberations. But I would love to render a decision tonight if we could. Yeah. JJ, I see you have your hand up. Do you have something you would like to add?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No worries. All right, so we have moved to continue this application potentially to our May 20th, potentially to our June 3rd meeting to be determined. Thank you, Attorney Bernheim, for your presentation tonight, and for everyone who came out to speak, as well as those who wrote letters. We greatly appreciate the input that you had for this application, and look forward to our deliberations based on that feedback that you've provided. All right. We will move forward in our agenda. The next item is 2026-32, regulation change, Planning and Zoning Commission, proposed modification to the Planning and Zoning fee schedule, public hearing, report, and recommended action. Steve or Brian, do you want to share the proposed modification for the fee schedule?
Sure. As soon as I can find it. I was trying to think of the best way to start out in terms of what to show you first. But just to give you a little bit of background regarding the fee schedule and why we're proposing to change it. So, it is a periodic exercise. All communities go through it. There's not a standard time frame in which this gets reviewed. We don't do it every 2 years, every 3 years. It's kind of like, well, we haven't looked at it in a while. Is there a reason to change it up at this point? So from my perspective we're a little over a year out from the comprehensive rewrite of the zoning regulations. With that came a lot of different things that we weren't regulating in the past, pretty much on every facet of every application. The first red text you see there, residential grading and filling, that's not something the city regulated before. So that's requires quite a bit of staff time and a lot of staff training involved with that, because it's some things that just were never looked at before. Really having to understand and look at engineering plans when you didn't have to do that in the past. So that happens. There's a lot of different things related to building design and building form that come along with the new code that require, again, more training, more understanding, new things to look at.
Steve,
Yes.
the one letter you received on this came from BLT. Which of these items does that refer to?
I think in general to the increase of the fees in general, if that answers your question.
I guess it does. I'm still confused because in terms of the size of the projects that company does, these fees are nominal.
Well, so yeah, I can get into the specifics of the specific fees. Yeah, and I have a different PDF that shows kind of the old fees or the current fees versus the proposed fees, but I figured I'd start here and then kind of work backwards that way. But I can proceed in any way you feel is necessary.
No, whatever you're most comfortable with.
Yeah, and I'll just go through and we can bounce back and forth, and feel free to ask any questions at any point. It's completely fine. So the fee changes, and maybe this is getting at what Attorney Constantini had referenced, is there are some changes to the commission level fees that go along with things. And again, like the other permits where there are proposed increases, there are a lot more things to look at with each one of these applications that we weren't looking at before. And again, fees go up over time. It's just part of the business Or, we haven't looked at the fees in over 4 years. So it's, just for example, what we charged for, if someone was building a new house, the fee was $460. Now it's $100 more to $560. But that comes along with all those grading things that we never looked at in the past, type of things you could do on your house, screening requirements related to utilities and HVAC equipment that wasn't necessarily a requirement before. So all those things need to get looked at and considered. So it adds to staff time. And then again, the cost of everything goes up and there's commensurate increases that go along with that. A big jump in terms of cost would be related to proposed text amendments or proposed changes to the zoning map. And that was done intentionally because this commission and staff spent a lot of time trying to get things, as right as possible. And as you guys know, we've been pretty proactive on changes where we recognize that some of the rules that were put in place weren't working the way we intended. So we've been constantly coming up with tweaks here and there to the regulations to try to make them make more sense as we've actually applied them to specific projects. So we feel like if somebody's initiating a text amendment or map amendment now, it's really something that we identify more so as to their benefit, as opposed to something that, we have to adjust this now because there's broader implications if we don't. So if you're making a change, you have to have good justification to make that change. Two things we should point out here, right underneath the zoning permits. We did add a separate fee of $250 that if you're in a flood zone, unless you're involved with permitting structures in the flood zone, it's hard to get appreciation for how much extra work is involved with flood zone analysis, tracking of the cost associated with that. And it's just a tremendous amount of staff time. And it's important to note, while Norwalk does have stricter flood regulations than other towns, those are based off federal and state guidance. It's not like we decided to enact those rules because we wanted to. Those are state and federally mandated items we need to look at in terms of making sure your utilities are flood proof, that they're out of the flood zone, that they're not artificially raising the grade in certain flood zones to cause flooding and disbursement of water onto other properties. So there's a lot of different factors that have to get looked at that, and the reviews are pretty intensive and comprehensive. What you see here, and I'm hoping this makes sense, and I'll try to explain it the best I can, is you see two columns. One is application fee, and the second one is zoning fee. One occurrence that has been a problem since kind of the dawn of time for us is that we get a lot of submittals of applications that end up going nowhere. So somebody submits say they want to build like a addition on their house, and they'll submit plans. We'd go through the entire review, and then for whatever reason, they decide not to do it. So we've already expended a lot of time and energy trying to get this into compliance and emailing them, contacting them, going back and forth on, what does this mean? Is this not, you're applying the code incorrectly here. And then they decide not to go forward with the project, but, the staff time is already spent at that point. So what we're recommending is that we break the fees into two fees. So for example, I'll just start with the second one there, which is an accessory structure over 200 square feet or a sport court. There is, as soon as you submit the application, there's a $150 fee. That is the application fee that is collected right when you submit it. Once the staff does the review and assuming that the structure is approvable, it meets all the code and so forth, then the additional $310 fee is applied to there. So the total fee for that would be $460. So you're just basically adding the two for budgetary purposes. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, that's broken down by different fees that go through there. Perhaps to what Attorney Constantini had referenced is, so certain types of uses, and probably more so in line with some of the things they've gotten approval for in the past, is there are increases in fees per unit for the multifamily housing. And that is, we feel that, yes, it is an increase, but I don't think they're astronomical fees. The zoning fees that we generate are not meant to cover staff costs for all the staff things that we do. If you look at the fees collected for zoning permits versus what the department budget is, it doesn't even equate to 10% of that. So, that we're not viewing ourselves as a money-making enterprise. It's really just meant to, cover some of the staff costs that are incurred by this, because, that the regulations and the planning intent has always been to encourage development in certain areas. So we understand that there's going to be staff and city responsibility that comes along with reviewing these plans and enforcing those plans. But at the same time, that there are costs incurred, that there should be some kind of compensation regarding that.
Steve, do these fees come back to P&Z, or do they go to the general fund?
They go to the general fund, but they're kind of listed under our budget. So there is some of it an offset there. So like when we were in front of BET or council arguing for things, we can point to that. Well, we actually increased our revenue by raising fees. So it does help justify expenses. And maybe I could have started with this table, but it's a good reference whether we started there or we finished there. This table shows the existing fees and the proposed fees. I didn't break it out with the application fee and the zoning fee. It's just the sum of the two there, so you can see the difference. The items that I've highlighted up top, I mentioned that like the zoning text amendment or the map change. That is, that's like I say, along with the special permit, where you see the largest increase in the fees. And I mentioned that the text amendment and the map amendment is done on purpose because there's a lot of thought and consideration that went into where these zoning boundaries should be, what types of uses should be in these zones, and how they should be regulated. Very similarly, special permits, we don't have a ton of special permits in the regulations, and that was done on purpose. The idea being that if we enact a good zoning scheme that's based on a solid planning exercise, that special permit should be something that's kind of unique and really kind of potentially impactful in the zone that it's located. So there's a higher degree of review and there's a higher degree of scrutiny that goes into those types of applications. So that I think is the justification behind why the increase is what it is. Then moving down to the zoning permits themselves, as I mentioned, the cost for 4 years to build a single family house, I should say the cost of zoning fee was $460. And so you've got to figure, $400,000 to build a new house at least. I don't know what the number is. It's going to be something in that ballpark. So we've, if you factor out over a 4-year period, we've gone up $25 a year to do that. I don't think that's a burden on anybody. I don't think it's anything that, more importantly, I don't think there's any costs in here that are going to prevent or cause anybody to pause new construction based on that. You'd have to look at the building permit fees to see what significant fees are. Those are much more, those are much heftier than what we've got here. I think these are just really meant to be commensurate with the work that's done and the amount of staff time that goes into these. It should be pointed out, which was laid out in the first memo, Norwalk's fees, proposed fees, are not the highest in the area. They're on the higher end. But I think over time, the other communities will catch up as they revise their fee schedules. And then maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 5 years, 6 years down the road, we'll go through this exercise again and adjust accordingly. It's not meant to be punitive. It's not meant to cover all our costs. It's just meant to offset some of our costs that, as I said, we've intentionally encouraged development in certain areas. And with that, there comes, additional burdens and additional staff requirements in order to make sure what's being constructed and built is consistent with that the the regulations and the plan. So part of it is normal city cost of doing business, and some of it is that there's additional cost for the additional incentive to build in those areas. I can stop sharing unless you want to go through stuff. Just answer questions, however you want to go proceed from here.
Steve, just I always thought that the cost of these fees was proportional to the cost of the project, but is that in another department that I'm confusing with? Like, I know the building department also has their fees as well, right? Maybe that.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
In building, in some communities do it. I think it's kind of mixed in terms of community to community. I think it's just how you were kind of trained and how you were taught to do this. Building does charge it based on the cost of construction. For me, that's not applicable to zoning because it doesn't really matter how expensive the project is to build in terms of like if you use nicer finishes and different things that rises up the construction cost. For us, it's really the bulk and the volume of activity that regulates and requires more work and the more intricacies of the project versus the cost of the project.
Okay, so and commercial and residential have always been the same. It's just the size under those zoning permits.
Yeah, so we do regulate. There's obviously different fees for non-residential construction versus residential, and then we break out the residential into 1 and 2 family, and then there's a cost for multi, and then the non-residential would break down. So an example would be if you did like a mixed-use building with 10,000 square feet of commercial and then 40 units up above, we would charge you for the 10,000 commercial at the non-residential fee, and then base the other cost off the number of units that you were building.
And does your department go back at the end of the day, when a project is all completed and make sure it's okay? Or is that just the building department?
No, we do that as well. We actually go out during construction and after construction. And then for a multifamily, for example, they walk, they don't go in every unit, but they go in a lot of the units, and they go in every workforce unit to make sure that the workforce unit is built to the same standard that the non-workforce unit is. So we go on every site, like, if they have intricate landscaping plans, we'll go through and check all that. We make sure the HVAC units are screened if they're not screened. Somebody brought up, maybe it was somebody on the commission, that one of the projects make sure they have their bike storage in the right spot. So we go out and check all those things. We'll check parking spaces, everything that's got to be there, we check.
Okay. And you say we're on the higher end, but are we more than Stanford?
In some areas we're more, in some not. I think Greenwich is the most. So, it's Greenwich. Danbury enacted a new fee schedule within the last year. We're some of theirs are still higher than ours, and sometimes it's not a straight apples to apples comparison, because it's just like if you said if they're basing theirs off of project value, it's harder for us to do a apples to apples if we're not doing it off the cost.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
List.
Are there other questions about the fee schedule before we open it up for public comment? All right. We'll now turn to the public comment portion of this public hearing. We'll give everyone one opportunity to speak. While there is no limit on how long you may speak, we ask that you are concise. This portion is not a dialogue, and staff will respond to all the comments at the end. We ask that you're polite in your comment and that you start with your full name and address. Brian, do you mind sharing how folks can participate in this hearing?
Sure. For anyone who'd like to speak about this application, please use the raise your hand tool now. It's at the bottom of your screen. You click that once. And if you're dialed in on the phone, you hit *9. With that, first we have Mr. Costantini.
Good evening, everyone. How are you?
Good evening. We can hear you. Can you share your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Rick Costantini. I don't live in Norwalk. I'm general counsel for Building and Land Technology. I I appreciate that you all received my letter from yesterday. I'm not going to reiterate everything in the letter. I just thought it was important for me to appear tonight, just generally speaking, in opposition to increase of the application fees. I just wanted it to be noted that it is important, the increase in fees are, it signals that, projects can become more expensive at the front end. When fees increase at the early stage, they magnify risk immediately, regardless of the project quality. They drive concrete decisions during the underwriting process. And so again, you guys have been here very long time tonight. I don't want to belabor all of the things that are in my letter. I think my letter laid it out pretty clearly, but we just wanted to be clear that from our perspective, any increases on the application fee side goes to the front end of the project, which can end up making the project more difficult depending on the project being proposed. So it also, we think, impacts generally housing supply. When you combine it with the increased construction costs and other upfront costs, it all gets lumped into amounts that need to get spent at the outset of a project. So we respectfully urge that the commission reject the proposed fee increases. And again, I thank you for your time. I know it's been a long night, so I won't take any more of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Lisa Henderson.
Hi, good evening again. I didn't plan on speaking about this, but I did stay on to listen to what was coming up next. I just want to say that, taxes are going up and now you're looking to raise some fees substantially. When does it stop? BLT may be able to absorb costs, but homeowners really cannot absorb any more costs. I hope that you vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you give us your address again, please?
21 Apple Tree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? Please use the raise your hand tool now or hit *9 if you're dialed in on a phone. Seeing none, Mr. Bryce.
Thank you. Steve, Brian, is there any feedback you'd like to give based on the comments?
No, I think, I don't won't argue the points. I think that, like I said, somebody building a new house, $100 fee increase that hasn't increased in 4 years on a project that's going to cost $400,000, I don't think will alter anyone's budget. And I think related to, the state is, as we're going to discuss in a few minutes, has come through with a whole host of changes to the regulations in terms of parking requirements that could lower construction costs all across the board. So that I think would more than offset any increase in zoning fees that we're going to discuss tonight.
Too, when I first started working for the city now, like 8 years ago, I was working the front counter and we had a bookshelf of applications that were approved and nobody came to come pick up that sat on that shelf for over a year. So I would think, putting an application fee at the front end would save taxpayer money because at least we're being compensated for work that's going to happen regardless.
Just a thought and a comment. If we talked about a lot about this when we were talking about the flood zone, and we didn't want people to do work that wasn't permitted. Are application fees the same thing as permit fees?
No, an application fee is kind of like, so we already do that now for, like, say someone comes in for a special permit. We don't collect the fee after you vote on the application. We collect the fee when you submit it. So I think it's consistent with that practice.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, let's say somebody wants to put on a new roof and they need to come to planning and zoning to get a permit and they have to pay for that permit. If the costs become too prohibitive, then they're going to put the roof on without doing the permit. And that's what we don't want to have happen. Same thing like with air conditioning or whatever it is that requires a permit for some type of renovation on a house. I can't imagine nobody would build a new construction house without getting a permit, but homeowner type improvements that go without permits become problematic down the road. So that would be one reason I would say keep those sort of home improvement permits as affordable as possible to encourage people to get the permit.
Yeah, let me show you, because
Yeah,
there
I
is-
think
the fee
most
schedule doesn't.
most home improvement, things aren't things that you necessarily even need a zoning permit for, like a re-roof. Usually it's
Yeah.
just a sign off through us and you're just getting your building permit.
Yeah, and if you see here, Tammy, to your point, so if you're doing propane tanks, AC units, small accessory structures, we didn't change the fee. It's the same as the existing fee, 110. Residential change in use, interior alterations, no change in the fee. So we didn't change any of that. Same price.
Okay, great. Thank you for pointing that out to me.
And I noticed, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, James.
Is that before after view in the agenda packet? I don't see it.
I may have not attached that, Harvey.
Okay.
Yeah, this might have
It's
gone.
there.
Yeah,
It's
that
not
second
there.
sheet, I don't think I shared.
Could you add that, Steve?
Yeah,
or
that
was-
would be great.
Didn't add it?
Yeah.
I noticed, I'm not sure if it's new or not, but that if you're applying for a permit after the fact, like you get a notice of violation that you built a garage that you didn't have a permit for, and then you go to apply for a permit, the fee is double.
Yeah.
I like that in the sense of discouraging, trying to increase people getting the permits in the first place on the front end. And from watching the BET meetings where they met with ECD and talking about zoning and all these other departments, I think if we weren't incrementally raising fees and adjusting them every few years, the taxes would be even higher. So.
Is there any other discussion or questions? Galen, was that the start of a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second for the motion? All right, I saw John first. Well, for this, is there any resolution needed for the change in fees?
Well, if your answer is yes, the answer I will give is I didn't put one together, so I'm hoping you can just vote to approve. It does have to go, the Zoning Board of Appeals has to take action on it, and it's going to end up going to council as well for approval.
Okay. Is this in our regulations? Like, is this like a change we actually have to make to the regulation document?
No, it's
Oh, okay.
specifically kept out of the regulations.
Gotcha. Okay. So I don't think we need a resolution, but unless anyone feels strongly, I'm happy to continue with the motion that's on the floor for approving as presented. Any discussion or comments before we move forward?
I mean, I am concerned about especially kind of the missing middle housing where we're making it more expensive to build housing like via this. And so I am, maybe it's reasonable. I take the point that the city has budgetary concerns, but yeah, I'm somewhat concerned about that.
Sure. I do see that the per additional unit piece did go up by $25, I believe, which certainly can scale, right, and have some impact on the projects. Yeah.
I kind of agree with Harvey, but I also think planning and zoning staff does a lot of work, but since you guys don't directly get the money, what good does it do? But there are also a lot of other fees involved in building things, and you have to have other permits and whatnot. So it's not just this that the applicant has to pay, and then permits that got opened and didn't get closed for many years, you have to pay a fee for that too. So I see that in real estate frequently in title search stuff.
I'd say too that if you if you may remember, some of you were on either planning or zoning, I would say 8 or 9 years ago, almost every moderate or significantly sized project used to have to come to the commission for approval, whether it was a site plan or a special permit. So that could have been a 20-unit project, would have had to come. So that means they have to hire, generally they're hiring an attorney, their architect is at the meeting, maybe they have their traffic guy. We've really cut back on, okay, we understand that we've laid out the city's zoning plan in such a way that this is where we think the appropriate density should be here and what makes sense. And given that this scale of project is proposed, we're not requiring a traffic study anymore for this type of thing. This is an acceptable amount of development on this area, given this is the kind of road that's there. We think it's just makes sense. So we've cut out a lot of those costs, which I think are definitely a lot more than the fees that we're charging as a part of this.
I'm glad to know that, Steve.
Steve, the thing that I think maybe it was Harvey just raised about the per additional unit with the multifamily. So that's new that it's being charged anything. How did it work before, that they only had to pay for the first 3 units and that was it?
Hold on, let me pull
No,
up.
there's a flat fee for the first 3 units, and then it's $100 additional per unit above that. Now it's the proposal's $125 per unit.
Oh,
that.
I'm looking at, I forgot that we don't have the pre and post. So the 0 is the application fee and the 125 is the zoning fee. It's not that it used to be 0 and now it's 125. Yeah. So what is the increase on that from current to now?
25
per unit.
Okay, thank you.
So 10 units is $250. I mean, yeah, I understand that cost is going to get passed on to the purchaser or the renter, but I don't think that's going to, contribute significantly to the housing affordability problems.
Yeah, I don't know the exact inflation number over the past 4 years, but I saw these as kind of tracking along that same band of what I would anticipate that to be, that it wasn't like significantly above what I would expect from an inflation standpoint.
Right, and to be clear, this isn't funding the city budget. It really, and it's not really affecting the individual property owner's taxes because that's completely separate.
So it's not even funding my staff budget. So it's like 10%, if maybe even 10% of it. I don't, is what it is.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. So let's go to a vote. I think we can do this one by a show of hands.
Now let's do roll call to make Diana's life easier.
Thank you. Okay, we will do this with a roll call. Brian, do you mind doing the roll call?
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Schultman?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hubers?
Yes.
Ms. Langalis?
Yes.
Ms. Lankowski? That's a yes. Miss Wells? Miss Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Tabashnik?
Yes.
Miss Jordan Byron?
Yes.
And Mr. Bryce?
Yes.
It's approved.
All right, that is our final public hearing of the evening. Next, we'll move to our discussion items. The first one is 2026-38 zoning text amendment, Planning and Zoning Commission, zoning regulation text amendment to Table 4.3.12.b-1, vehicular parking requirements, preliminary review. Steve or Brian, are you presenting this?
Yeah, I'll start, and then Brian maybe walk you through some of the specific stuff. This comes out of we'll call it the omnibus housing bill that was passed last year. The immediate, there's a whole bunch of things, and I think I sent a memo out before about the bill and the impacts on the city and things we're going to have to do or not do. This one section on parking, we have to do something by July 1st. I mean, we could choose to do nothing. That's another option and just accept, accept the legislation that the state has enacted. Our recommendation is that we take some action on certain things to, take a look at parking considerations, because that's a big outcry throughout the city, especially in certain parts of the city, that there's not enough parking on site, that parking on the street is overcrowded, that there's not enough enforcement of parking on the streets. So basically, and Brian, please correct me immediately if I go astray of what the legislation says, but in essence, the state passed a part of the housing bill said, for developments of 16 units or less, you can no longer regulate, or I should say require parking. So that's a new change. Then they said, if you have a development of greater than 16 units, they can either provide a parking needs assessment, which we'll go into some more detail on, which is basically like they'll come up with this is what we think we need for parking based on the available parking on the street, public parking assets, what we think our tenants are going to use, etc. Or you can come up with parking based on one space for a studio, one space for a 1-bedroom, and then 2 spaces for 2 or more bedrooms. That's a little bit different than what we do currently. Currently, we say it's 1.3 per unit, which I think is based on our analysis, is a pretty accurate number on the realities on the ground. What they also said, and this is where it gets even wonkier, is that you can come up with 2 districts, neither district exceeding 4% of your land area of the city, where you can sort of exempt yourself from the no parking exemption. But the applicant gets to say, I'll provide you with this parking needs assessment, or I'll give you the formula based on the number of bedrooms. So getting a little more detail on that 4%. Basically, I'm not sure how they came up with 4%. That's a weird number. It was probably just argued amongst a couple of different people who were either for or against this whole concept. But basically, they set aside 2 4% areas where the city can potentially require parking for any size development. And the language is a little unclear about if you get to the point where you don't disagree with the applicant as part of their parking needs assessment, but we think we have our strategy for that. So what Brian and I did, and then we spent a lot of time consulting with TMP, Jay Hibansky in economic development, and then also working, informing the mayor's office about what we're thinking is we came up with 2 areas that we feel are areas where we should regulate parking. And they predominantly encompass the bulk of the CD3 and the CD2 zones, which we're going to show you on some maps. And the reason for that is, and we didn't include the CD4 zone. So just kind of refresher, the CD4 zone is really the city's urban core area, which is a big chunk of South Norwalk, stretching up to Wall Street. It has the train stations in there. It's kind of some of the denser parts of the city. We didn't include that in the exemption areas because a lot of the projects you're going to see there are going to be over that 16 unit threshold. So they're going to more than likely have to provide parking regardless. There's also city parking assets there already. So there's the ability for additional parking there. And the CD2 and the CD3 zones, and the CD3 is a multifamily zone, but it's the less dense of the multifamily zone. And the CD2 zone is the 1 and 2 family zone. And if you remember back from the rezoning, when we were talking about upzoning more areas to the CD2 zone, we had a lot of conversation and concern about those 2 family zones and what the impacts would be on those zones if the 2 family dwellings didn't provide parking. So a lot of those streets, and we'll zoom in and look at the maps in a lot more detail. A lot of those CD2 areas and CD3 areas have really tight streets. There's emergency evacuation routes through there. There's already a lot of on-street parking. The streets are often narrower. The development is denser in those areas. So our concern is that if we did not require parking in those areas, that there's the ability, not ability, the possibility that some of those neighborhoods could get overrun without having on-site parking. So that's how we came up with the areas that we came up with. And maybe before we get into some of the other changes, Brian, maybe if you want to bring up the maps in detail that show the exemption areas, and then we could, just look at it in larger context. And then again, if anything I said doesn't make sense, please ask now. I'm happy to send out the memo and the link to the statute again, so you guys have a chance to read it. And again, we're not taking any action tonight. We want to, introduce it tonight. We're going to put it back on your next memo, next meeting for conversation again. And then what we need to do is schedule a public hearing to get feedback, because we're going to end up making amendments to the zoning regulations to adopt this. And then we have to send a package up to the state to let them know this is what we're doing. And hopefully they agree that what we're doing makes sense and they don't say no or it's rejected. So Brian, if you want to just kind of walk through the maps in detail and just maybe help orientate folks to the areas we're talking about.
Sure. So this is just like the zoning map, and then this can be, we'll share this with everybody and post this publicly so people can play around with it and kind of zoom in and out. So we focus on the CD3 and CD2 areas. We're limited. I think Norwalk's land area, per my last calculation, was something like 14,592 acres. And we're allowed to take 2 4% areas of that 14,592 acres, which comes out to about 584 acres per area. So we were able to sort of come up with 2 separate zones. I guess for sake of simplicity, we'll call this one the western zone and this one the eastern zone, where we are proposing that we would still require parking, or for the applicant to have the ability to submit their parking needs assessment if they disagree with the parking numbers that we have. So both of these areas, I think, are pretty much at the threshold for acres. So this one's 580, 581 if you round up, the western one, and then the eastern zone is also 580 acres. So we're pretty tight up against that 4%. But again, these were based on areas that we had consulted with TMP on of like problematic areas where we don't really have clear delineation or direction from the state is what these zones have to look like, other than they can only be 4% of the land area. So this, it might look a little janky or gerrymandered, but it was a way to kind of try to stretch that 4% as best we can to the areas that we had concerns about. If anyone has any questions, again, it's hard to, just be looking at the map and have questions, but again, we'll share this publicly that you guys can, scroll around. And if, visually, if this isn't helpful, we can, shut the zoning off and you can kind of take a look.
Yeah, maybe Brian, if you could post the map where they can turn on and off the layers, and maybe just create some static PDFs of the different views and then post them as well. That way, maybe if they're a little less savvy with turning on and off the layers, that's all there.
Got it. And I'll just kind of try to point out things with, there's some areas of the CD3 that we didn't put in. Part of that is, so up by the hospital, you have CD3 here. These are pretty large lots. They're already developed. If they were, there's our expectation is that they won't redevelop, but if they ever were to, they'd probably construct more than 16 units. So therefore they, have to provide parking anyways. So we didn't propose to include areas like that. So again, it's just kind of focusing on the smaller lots where parking was identified as an issue from TMP.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, so it's clear to whether the public's listening or picks up on it at a later date. This is something we're reacting to based on new legislation. We don't really have a choice. We can completely not put these parking exemption areas in, and that would apply universally across the board. But we think that there are areas of the city that if we don't take this action and then somebody builds something without parking, that it's going to be really problematic for everybody who lives in those areas. So we're trying to make the best of a difficult situation. So I think that's why we came up with the methodology we came up with. Last other thing, and then I'll be quiet, is we did not include any single family zones because it's nearly impossible to differentiate why single family area A should be included where single family area B shouldn't be included. For us, that wasn't even a consideration, especially considering that Norwalk's single family zones, I think, are over 60% of the city. So it's not like you can just pick and choose with any kind of logical reasoning without favoring one group or the other. So that was never a consideration for us.
And if anyone's set with that, I can move over to like the boring text stuff if you want to look at that.
Well, before that, I'll compliment your Mac work. Thank you for this visual. Really appreciate it.
No problem. That's the fun stuff. All right, I'll pull up text.
Yeah, so this is our next item about the pre-approved.
Or no, this is just text link.
My bad. Yeah, keep going. Okay.
So like Steve had said, so the state pretty much said with residential developments, that's what they used as their language of 16 units or less, you can no longer require parking except for those two areas. So we're kind of trying to hit that. So I listed out here everything that's considered dwellings per our regulation. So things that would fall under the state bill. So the first text that we're proposing is to start with dwellings of 16 units or less, that they won't be regulated except for when we come up with whatever name of those two areas. Should we go with those two areas? And then we would say that they shall provide the lesser of the following three options. The first one is the state language. The second is our existing language, or third is the total number indicated by their parking needs assessment. Then
one quick thing which we didn't talk about. There is some language in the statute that talks about if basically the zoning enforcement officer, for lack of better terms, disagrees with the parking needs assessment, it really needs to be based on the health and welfare of the community. So that's really kind of vague language. So how we're kind of working on interpreting that is if someone comes in with a parking needs assessment on a piece of property and we are in complete disagreement with their assessment based on narrowness of the street, complaints about parking on the streets, accidents, or what we see is just overall volume on that road area, that's when we would probably deny their parking needs assessment, and then they would kick into one of the other two categories for providing parking. And if they disagree with us, then the tricky thing is typically if it's an application that is just in front of staff, then it's going to be an appeal of the staff's decision to the Zoning Board of Appeals versus an item that the commission would look at. So again, I don't know, none of this has been tested yet. So it's just kind of a little bit up in the air until we get to a problematic application.
So the next part was, so we're thinking with developments, so in a lot of circumstances, we require that they're mixed use, or we don't want to be oppositional to mixed use. It's nice to have like a first floor commercial use associated with the development. But at the same time, we didn't want, a Merit 7 office tower to say, we're going to put one unit in, haha, we're exempt from the parking regulations because we have less than 16 units. So we proposed that for mixed use developments where more than 50% of the floor area is designated to residential uses, that essentially they're going to have to abide by they can use the residential parking standards. And then where the commercial or that had more than 16 units or more than 50% of the floor area is dedicated to commercial uses, then they'd have to go through the parking chart and provide the number of spaces required for their commercial use and the residential uses. The rest of this is just kind of cleanup. So community residences would fall under dwellings of 16 dwelling units or less. Per the state definition, we're not allowed to regulate community residence is different than a single family residence. So that's why we just said, all right, it's going to not be regulated. Dormitory, really the only change here is that when it's located in the CD4 zone, and this is a bit outside of what the state required, but so this doesn't necessarily need to be considered as part of this, but when located in the CD4, it's the lesser of the following options. It's either our existing standard or they could submit a parking needs assessment. Deleting group home out of the table. This is mostly just because a community residence is actually the proper term, not group home. And then giving a definition for what a parking needs assessment is. So we had consulted with Stanford and Fairfield, and this is pretty similar to what they had proposed. So it's just kind of giving the applicants a list of what we're expecting to be included as part of their parking needs assessment should they submit one.
Clear as mud. It's going to be my guess.
Yeah, what's mostly going to really be tricky is when an application comes in that does not go to you guys. It's just a staff level review and the parking needs assessment is not satisfactory. And now we need to make a discretionary decision where we're not supposed to make discretionary decisions. So it'd be interesting.
Would that go to ZBA or would that go to us?
ZBA.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then I mean,
Great.
it's so hard to speculate what ZBA is going to do, but then whatever ZBA does, then the recourse would be from there. They would go to court if they, so there's an extra step.
So we're entirely left out of it.
No, not on that. Just for anything that's on the smaller scale that you don't see anyway, like
just over the counter, right?
Yeah. So the same, you're like, so what I was talking about before with the fee schedule, that, certain things that maybe in the past the commission had seen, you no longer see. So I think the site plan threshold, Brian, did we do it by like 20 units or 25 units? When it gets to that level, then it comes to the commission for approval. Then below that, it's administrative review.
Yeah, it depends on the zone. So the CD3 ones, I think it's 13 units is the site plan trigger.
Okay.
So someone could come in with like a 12 unit and a parking needs assessment, and that would be staff level. Whether that's likely or not, who knows? I don't know how expensive these parking needs assessments are going to be, or if they want to take the risk of submitting one and getting it rejected.
I'll say too, for East Norwalk specific, we kept in for the EVTZ, the density allowance, if they want to increase that, is still by special permit. So it's not like they get to get around any of it. The special permit trigger is still there for that.
Any feedback for staff on the proposals this evening?
And we'll put it back on your next agenda so you can kick it around. What we were thinking schedule wise, because we want to get things enacted before July 1st, so we have it on the books, is we would, on June 17th, you have your joint meeting with Economic Development to review the strategic harbor plans. We figured we'd allocate like an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes for a special meeting starting at 6. And then we would do another special meeting starting either at 7:45 or 8 to do a public hearing on the map, the regulation amendment for the parking. And we could also do, if you think there was time, get into West Rocks then, or we punt West Rocks to one more meeting after that. It's up to you.
Because as of right now, we don't have anything lined up for the June 3rd meeting. Unless we
No,
want to do West Rocks on June 3rd. But
yeah. So yeah, right now you could either do the West Rocks at another meeting, or you could cancel June 3rd if you just wanted to have one long meeting, or break it up into a couple lighter meetings, and you'll have to make a call on that.
Okay.
At the June, we can't get this item on for June 3rd just based on referral time. So
right,
it's either do it all on the 17th or have a special meeting, like on the 10th, or some other time that works for you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do have Manresa text amendment special permits lurking in the background. They're getting very anxious for me to review stuff, so that will be coming down, and I think you'll need to treat that by itself.
Okay. Based on that, I'm wondering if maybe we should combine both this discussion and the West Rocks Road continuation to the June 10th timeframe. Just that way, we have one meeting with two things going on. That's where my mind's at right now. I don't know if anyone feels strongly about that, and that would be in lieu of the June 3rd meeting. But maybe we send a poll out through email and see if there's availability on the 10th.
Yeah, we can do that, and then just confirm the timeframes with all the applications, just to make sure we're okay.
Yep. Great. Should we talk about the pre-approved accessory dwelling units?
Nothing. I won't go into much detail tonight, but I think at a subsequent meeting we'll have a lot more. We've made good progress on what we think it looks like, not the ADUs, but what the format looks like of getting them kind of the contest piece of it going. So once I want to have a visual for you what it'll look like, so we can either do that next meeting or the meeting after.
Sounds good. So the next item is our minutes. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes? Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Tammy. I think we can do this by a show of hands. All those in favor of approving the minutes? All right. Any abstentions? Just JJ. Okay, great. Otherwise, everyone else voted in favor. All right. Are there any comments of the director?
Nothing further. Thanks for your time tonight.
Of course. Any comments of commissioners? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn? All right. All those in favor? Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Night.